welcome everybody today, those that are online joining us for the meeting, those in our very productive audience today, guest speakers, councillors, our iwi, welcome. And this is our last meeting for 2025. Year's gone very quickly. Right, so with that, we'll move into the karakia. And our iwi representatives aren't carefully making any eye contact here. So, right, I'm getting shakes of heads. So, for the karakia, kia hora, te marino, kia whakapapa, whanau te moana. Hei hurahei, ngā tātou, ai te rei nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou ie, tātou katoa, hui e, taiki e. Now, apologies, we have, is Janella online? She is. So we have no apologies. Councillor Munns is joining us online from the far north. Welcome, Janella. So declarations of interest. There's been no changes made to the interest register, but please, as always, keep that updated as your circumstances change. We have no urgent items on the agenda. We have Tim Cadigan from Te Ara Awai joining us at 2 p.m. to talk about water treatment. But we will be moving into the public forum for our guest speakers to present to us now. So if our guest speakers are ready, we will call up, first off, we have Les Morgan. Leslie's down the back there. Les is talking to us today about waste minimisation. The speakers have 5 minutes, and there's 5 minutes for questions and interaction, and we'll go from there. So Les, please come up and join us. There's a seat there for you.
Thank you, Steve.
The floor's yours, Les.
Hi, thank you. About 10 months ago, we had the waste minimisation submissions, which I spoke at length, made a wonderful submission, if I say so myself. I'd like to know where we are as how has it been moved forward by council as we were working. I seem to remember trying to work with our neighbours up the road when it comes to waste. And I'd also like to ask, what is the position when it comes to waste minimisation and recycling for events like Wild Foods and the new ultramarathon and whatnot, especially as we're on a limited size with Butler's landfill takes about 35,000 tonnes per cell. And if we're having repeated events each year, the events seem to be getting a free, like, chuck it all in the hole and there's no consequence. But for the ratepayer, you've got to recycle. I'm not emptying your bin because you're not recycled. And yet we seem to have events where there doesn't seem to me to be a set thing of where's your recycling policy, where's your waste minimisation policy, can you do better in the future when you come and represent yourself at an event like this as an outside contractor? Because it can't all fall back on me and you as ratepayers to keep on subsidising people. And why are we still not looking to the future when it comes to waste? Because you can't keep putting it in a hole in the ground. I've driven to Ross recently, and that hole in the ground was pretty ripe. And I'm being generous when I say ripe. It's, you know, it smells on a good day, but the other week it was off the chart. I've worked in waste management, and I've not smelled a dump that bad ever. It was strange. And we just can't keep burying the stuff. So where are we with the waste minimisation thing that we did? What's the progress, or is there no progress? Where are we?
Thank you. So that's it. Okay.
It's a general question. I'm not here
that's fine.
I'm not here to give anybody a rack up. I'm just asking questions.
So, has anybody got any questions for Les on that? Because this really is for Earl to answer on where we're at, but also where we're potentially going from council's perspective on making progress, as has been discussed before. But has anybody got any questions for Les first, or do you want to hear Bill's response first. Sorry, I'll throw you in there.
Through the chair, it would be nice to have the questions first.
That's right, no.
But yes, we are working with the other councils on collective contracts and our waste minimisation management plan. We've brought in a range of new issues like glass collection, we've brought in tile waste programs that takes tires out of the waste stream. We're looking at other initiatives through government, but it is very expensive to run recycling. In fact, the government is announced last week looking at what they're going to be doing with waste levies, so that we might be able to get a bigger percentage back to help support the community on waste recycling initiatives. So it is at our forefront. And as for any events that happen here in town, they pay a standard rate for disposal. And I know at the last, even though it's a destination event last year, I know that they did actually have recycling containers as well as waste containers. So that's and that's about right. The stage of time.
Yeah. All right, can I go again if I've got a couple of minutes?
Sorry. Has anybody got any questions for Les before he? Because what would have been actually beneficial with this, Les, if we'd had the questions, perhaps
Right.
we could have had it answers populated. And then I'm also sort of sensing that whether we need to bring this forward for a report to council to update councillors on waste management, minimisation, going forward, which is part of the induction process we have anyway, because everybody's got to be able to understand what our waste practice is, where ourselves are, so that when we make decisions, they actually know and have seen what we're talking about. So we've still got a lot of that to do collectively around the table. So Greg.
Firstly, are you more concerned, like a major concern about food waste going into the facility because of the smell that you mentioned?
Well, I mean, the food waste thing is almost an impossibility around here because it just doesn't seem, it's not viable and it's not cost effective. And I think the glass thing is not cost effective either. You seem to have one blue bin per 10 or 15 households, from what I can see, and one guy in a lorry that we're now forking out for, that it just doesn't make sense to send it down to Ross or wherever, you know what I mean? The food waste, you're never going to do it. I just find that having worked in waste management at a landfill and at a recycling centre, I don't know why there's a odour from Butler's landfill compared to, I mean, I used to work at Whitford in South Auckland. You couldn't smell it. It was just clean air. So I'm not blaming anybody, but it's just something's not, it must be the bin zone or something that's not being collected or disposed of. And I'd just like to see a greater push, and I'm going to say it, to incineration. That's a third of me. You know, it's another two of them, and that's all you're putting in the ground. Not one of this. Incineration is the way forward. Just everybody's got their heads buried in the sand. I mean, I love our environment, but we can't keep burying it. I said it before and I'll say it again. If you read what I wrote about waste management, burning it is the only option in the future. And we don't need a big plant, we just need little plants.
I think with this, we'll put this through to the chief executive for this to come to council in the new year as far as waste management, because it is part of the upskilling, acknowledging that I mentioned before for councillors anyway. And I know we've got a lot around here that actually are interested in this conversation and what we're doing and when we're going moving forward. So is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Please do that.
All right, sweet.
Thank you very much for that, Les. Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Just make sure you take your container. Thanks, Les. Appreciate it. Next presenter or speaker is Lynette Byrne, and Lynette's talking to us about the lack of taxi shuttle service for Koki and Greymouth Field, all those needing access to services. Welcome, Lynette. Lynette also presented to the West Coast Transport Authority in Greymouth, and from there I asked her to come and present to council here. Again, advantageous for councillors to understand the issues and problems that are out there and look at what we can do to assist and mitigate some of these issues that are there. Floor's yours, thank you.
I represent a group of people in the Hokitika area that would like to improve transport options within our district. This includes options within our town and between other towns, particularly Greymouth. This group includes people from the community, health sector, NGOs, local business and Greymouth. The issue is we need to consider the needs of the transport disadvantaged coastwide, but feel if we could undertake investigation in the Westland district and get outcomes, this could be a pilot for other districts. We're grateful that Kaya from the Regional Council attended one of our recent meetings to outline the total mobility scheme and its level of use. We understand this scheme is currently underutilised within our area, and we will endeavour to promote this to increase uptake. However, informal conversations with locals show uptake can be impacted due to limited taxi operational times. We're also aware that the taxi service provision is limited and does not cover all communities across the coast. West Coast Health and Putini Waiora both operate health navigator services, which is only available certain parts of the day. St John operate a shuttle service for medical appointments, but to make this more efficient for Hokitika and South Westland, we need to see a vehicle based in Hokitika, and we know there are volunteers able to operate this. Discharge from hospital, especially when people are taken up by ambulance and not admitted, they have no family available to help get them home, and that's become a big issue. Social isolation in our district is increasing as our population ages and many are no longer able to legally drive, but they do because they have no other option, which is a safety concern. Our hope is to keep people active and in their own homes by having transport options. If a disaster happens, our elderly will be in an even worse position than they are now, with lack of support and even isolation, especially in remote areas. Our group is happy to help council connect with people in Hokitika and our wider district, and we're keen to support in any way we can. However, we feel that the onus is on council to lead this activity to connect with local communities to improve your understanding of demand and services across the region. We believe undertaking a comprehensive engagement process would unveil transport needs and identify opportunities that could in establishing a more integrated and effective solution for the coast, rather than having each community struggle to solve and fund their individual transport needs. We look forward to engaging with council further on this topic.
Thank you very much for that, Lynette. Questions or information? Lynette, it is an issue, and I think most of us are quite aware from conversations we have with residents, the troubles that are there. I did notice, I mentioned this to Gladys before, is that the government's just announced they could cut the disability transport subsidy. So, you know, it's going to be a battle. But then Lynette did say to me that there are, where they've cut with one thing, they've expanded on another. What do you see we can do as council to assist this, whether by advocating or actually trying to corral and drive something through?
Yeah, definitely corralling and trying to drive something. I mean, it needs to be a whole community effort to try and resolve this.
Sorry.
More comment than me. I completely see the problem, and I have experience with it. I see the problem with a number of my close neighbours that use the St John Health Shuttle very regularly, and it not being based in Hokitika has been a problem. I sit on the St John Area Committee, so I see that, and it comes up often. The issue is we've got only one driver in Hokitika, and the driver has to drive to Greymouth, pick the shuttle up, come back to Hokitika, take the people up, can't wait around, come back, go back. It's, you know, so it limits that, you know, like you say, the volunteers are here, but it's quite a circus for them to actually operate the shuttle. Whereas, you know, there's that possibility of having a conversation of having potentially an extra shuttle that is based in Hokitika that then operates that service. The issue around getting people home from hospital is a very another interesting one, because with your medical appointments, obviously people are booking well ahead and they know what's going on. Those situations where people aren't admitted and need to get home at some crazy hour of the night and can't, there's quite a different situation, which would, you know, someone would need to be available to react to that. I need to get home late at night, kind of, you know. So it's an interesting one, how you would manage that. It would be a different sort of system. But you could have a network of volunteers that are available for that. I can see that possibly working. I wonder whether there's a need to get you to present possibly to the, or have a conversation at least with St John and the area committee about improvements to that health shadowing model, or how it would work to get here.
It's through the chair, and it's, you know, like making sure we can get some even funding locally to actually help base Havisham there. I know there's a group of volunteers around that have said that they can, and they're ready to get police checking and all that done. And right, the hospital has been very good. The night shift coordinator has actually been arranging for some people to stay overnight in the short stay beds until the morning so that somebody can come and pick them up. So we are working with some of the things on that.
That's great.
Yes, councillor.
Through the chair, have you looked at other remote regions around the country and got any ideas of how other people are dealing with the same problem for us?
They're actually worse off than we are in some areas, but then others are, you know, looking to us.
Has there been any work on just leveraging sort of the generosity of the community, maybe a database of people that can be called that are happy to volunteer and pick people up, or a social media page where people can see if anyone's available for a ride? Is there?
It has happened before, but it's the application of insurance and things like that. People using private vehicles, even though they're not being paid, it's this things that we've got to look at and address with that.
Yeah, it's a tough one in a region like this.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair. Seems to me it'd be prudent to contact Nelson Coach Lines because they obviously run school buses, which after they drop the kids off at school, if there was capacity, they could then go and run to Greymouth or even up from Harry because there's a school bus there. That obviously wouldn't solve the health remit, but it would solve getting around and people that don't have vehicles or have lost their license. But I guess it would be a user pays model rather than cancel.
A lot of them are quite happy to pay, but it's just to actually have a service.
I would contact Nelson Coach Lines because they already have the drivers, and a lot of them do it as a part-time job and aren't working, you know, in another job. So there might be scope to use one of those buses that are just sitting around until 3 o'clock to the next day that gets home again. So it could be a solution.
I guess, yeah, it's a matter of how we help you pull this together. By way of like Councillor Burton said, talking to St John. I know we had a meeting in the RSA last year, we informed about just that, you were there at that meeting too. So it's a matter of what we can do, whether we help pull different entities together for that wider conversation. Because I don't think it's for one person to try and resolve. We need to know what's out there, where the pressure points are, and what we can manipulate or potentially improve to actually provide the service that we need. It's a matter of coordinating that, and who's got the time to do it. Not looking at you.
Yeah, maybe we could organise a public meeting for in the new year, and
It's a good place to start. Yeah. And go there, I think you'll find that there's a lot of support around the table for that. And if we rock up to, we can have tips on and looking at who else needs to be invited to attend. So let's stay in contact and let's plan on sorting something out like that in the new year. And we can come and certainly support and put our heads together and look at widening the net of who we get to the table.
thank you very much. We didn't want to do anything without our council being aware of what we were actually looking at.
Appreciate that and appreciate you coming and speaking to us. Thanks for that.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Lynette, for that. So we'll work on that. Oh, you've got that recorded, so we'll look at that, and Lynette will coordinate with you with a date and time and venue. We'll coordinate with you for a date and time and venue to do something there, and we can use our social media system to get things out to the wider public as well. Lovely, look forward to that. So next on the agenda is the minutes of meetings. We have council meeting minutes from the 27th of November. Pages 7 to 16. I'm after a mover and seconder, please, so we may resolve that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 27th November 2025 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. Do I have a mover and seconder, please? Yes. Councillor Walker, Councillor Gillette, all in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. And I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed ordinary council meeting minutes of 27 November 2025. Thank you for that. We'll now hand over to Chief Executive on the action list, please. And for everybody, that is page 1719.
So if we go to the action list, I just want to update item 1, although we did say that this would be coming back in February 26th. The reason for that being that we still need to firm up some of the government regulations around earthquake strengthening, etc. They're still not bedded in terms of finality, so we need to do that to inform the report. And I believe that in response to Chris Madwick's request around whether we do public or private buildings, it's not normally the function of the council. So we would not be including that as part of, we will do the council-owned buildings, but not public and private. Happy to take questions now if you would like. Paul?
Through your wish, okay, I thought the council was the one that's, they put the deciding rating.
No, they relate, the seismic relays, my understanding, and I'm sorry, person who does that part of the process is not available at this part of the meeting, but we can get them later on. My understanding was that that was related to the government ratings that were then applied. It is not for us to set the ratings, we set against the criteria government sets, but we would not be going back to do the assessment, do that through public and private buildings. We could do it if the council felt that it was imperative that we did it, but it would require us to provide you with a report as to what that would take in terms of staff availability and cost, etc.
Well, the council has provided in the past with this old earthquake prone buildings, etc. So, I mean, you're saying the council doesn't have a role?
I'm I think that I was referring to the fact that you made a request particularly about St Mary's Church and any other public or private buildings.
Well, I don't think I'm the only one to check it wants to know that. Where does this stand? in relation
No, I'm
to-
sure you're not. But the question that we interpreted that from was, do we go in and do any further assessment on it? Perhaps what you were saying, and I'm happy to be corrected if I've misunderstood this, is that what you're asking for is, do those buildings, do we provide a list of the buildings that have earthquake strengthening requirements? Is that what you're asking for from a public and private perspective?
Well, yes. Yes. Otherwise, how's it going to move forward? Who's going to do it? Not the council.
Perhaps we can include that in the February paper. That will give us clarity about what the expectations is for council and for government with the new strengthening regulations. And then that everyone will be clear then as to which responsibility sits with who for which particular buildings.
Right, because I mean, we did an earthquake prone building, it was on the council's register. And we were put through hoop after hoop from this council regarding that. So
perhaps if we provide that clarity in the paper, that will help everybody, not only yourself, but those in the community, to understand their responsibilities and where that can be actually undertaken. Would that be more useful?
that's what we're getting, but yeah.
We will in February, but we'll make sure that it's there clearly for you. Sorry.
Through the chair, I think the regulations changed in that pre-2018 councils used to provide IEPs, so if building was less than 33%, you're going to register, but after that date, that onus was taken off councils, I believe, and it was pushed onto the commercial property owners to undertake them assessments, so that the cost wasn't on the councils anymore.
So then that makes it more important that we have that clarity about where it's moved from to where it's moved to. So then people can understand where the responsibility lies. So if they have questions or any issues, they can come to us directly if that's where it's appropriately placed. Happy to make sure that's in their paper.
Because we've also got to bear in mind that when these rules came in, council was charged with enforcing and upholding the requirements. So we weren't the instigator, we weren't the writer, we were just upholding our duty with that. So
That's right.
let's get some clarification on where we are now.
Only simple question around that, which was what then, given the government have changed the rules on this, just in the last few months, what are the implications of this? How does that affect the workload? I'm not talking about the system, it's only the one.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the division, I'm talking about the council voting, the council system of each bill. There aren't that many.
Okay,
So we've got clarification, we can bring that back.
that's useful. We can make sure that's nice. Thank you. In terms of the rest of the action,
Thank you, councillor. Billy.
my understanding is that there's only action 8, which is the presentation on water treatment regulations, which is a presentation by Tim Cadigan at 2 p.m. today by Zoom for people to be hearing that presentation. And the only other point I would make of the action list is action item number 9. We did commit to bringing a paper for the consideration of the previously called Consenting and Compliance Committee. I just highlight for councillors that whenever a triennium completes, that all of the subcommittees, committees, etc., are dissolved. So what we will be bringing you is terms of reference for a new committee, not a refreshed previous committee, just for clarification, because I think some folk just thought it was a refresh. At the end of each triennium, those subcommittees and committees are all dissolved. So we'll need to bring through a new paper of terms of reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Everybody quite happy with that, understand that, and we'll make sure that comes forward for the next meeting. Who's got that noted. So I'm after moving to seconder, please, so we can resolve that the updated action list from the chief executive be received. Councillor Maitland, thank you very much. Councillor Martin, thank you very much. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Munns as well up there.
Was one of the item which is Lake Canary. And I know we're getting a report back.
February, February, we've put it.
Okay. Well, also, the council previously requested a round table meeting on this. So is that happening? All parties around the table.
We had that discussion at the last meeting around that, and I thought that had been resolved. I'm happy to go back and have a look at that.
We'll go back and check the content in the record of that, because I think we also saw it that we had to change the steps. We had to do this to enable that, but I could have that wrong too. But we'll go and check the records of that. Councillor
That
Burnham.
is the action actually on here is to request for a roundtable to discuss the issues. So my understanding was that we were to have iwi, the community association. They were a bit concerned about what they heard in the meeting. And so getting everyone around the table to actually have a conversation
Regional council, all breeds, etc.
and having everyone here.
All together in one meeting.
So, yeah.
Right. Yes, it is on the action list from there, but I think we still need to have that work that the chief executive was referring to. So that when we're sitting at a round table, we have all the essential information for starters. Because otherwise we're going to have a round table and then having to go off and get that information to the table. And I think it's important that also is that once there's a time set in place, that everybody has the essential information that they need to bring for that.
Because at the last meeting, we basically had a report that says nothing to see here. And that was not the expectation of them.
So my recollection of the discussion at meeting, having been corrected, was that from a perspective of where we were talking about how the water supply had been monitored and managed, from our perspective, had met the requirements. Doc had also made some commentary in that paper, but this ensuing conversation was more around what happens when you have the septic tanks and the other infrastructure that have been there over a period of time, and how does that then get managed and looked at in an ongoing fashion. I think that was my correct recollection of
That's
that.
right, and that was the intent of a roundtable discussion, therefore we have those voices in the room, we have regional council, we have Department of Conservation, we're all hands around together.
And my understanding is that what we'd like to do is bring the paper in February that gathers the information we've got to date on some of that infrastructure and length of stuff that would help inform that conversation. So it can happen at the same time. We could have the roundtable directly after that, or we could have it directly before, so it feeds in. I'm not concerned at either. It's up to whatever you might feel would be the most.
Look, just to confirm, because we are going to go round and round with this discussion, is that from the minutes of the last meeting, the General Manager District Assets will investigate with the Regional Council on what other data they collate relating to testing, Resource Management Act changes, past and future developments, Lake Canary, and report back to Council in February 2026. And that also refers back to the Councillor Gillette made reference to the Department of Conservation, so there was conversations to be held there. So it's listed in the topics discussed and those points that need to be correlated to come forward from meeting in February. And that's what we agreed to at the time. Next slide.
Yes, Your Worship, we did agree to that, but that doesn't override the.
No, it doesn't, but we need that information to have that meeting, that conversation.
Okay, all I'm asking was that we don't decide the fact that we asked for the roundtable discussion.
No, it's noted in there, and that is why we need that for that report in February to then engage with that roundtable meeting. Yeah, thank you. So we've already signed off on move and second and resolve that the Chief Executive's report being received. Thank you very much for that. And we move on to presentations. And first up, we have the Westland Industrial Heritage Park. And we have Bob, who's going to talk to us today. Welcome, Bob. Please come and join us at the table.
Thank you all. Okay, I've got Mark also along with me to present part of the
Right.
On this protection unit.
You didn't tell me why, did you, Bob?
For those who don't know me, I'm Bob Gager. I'm president of the Heritage Park and Mark's one of my committee. Just a little bit of background. About 25 years ago, a group of interested people who were interested in heritage and industrial artifacts set up the Westland Industrial Heritage Park. They were helped by Heritage Hokitika in those days and the council. They were housed in several buildings at the present site that had previously been used by Ministry of Works and Borough Council amongst others. Westland Industrial Heritage Park was incorporated in 2006. Our purpose, enshrined in our constitution, is to conserve, maintain and promote the use and enjoyment of items of industrial heritage and cultural interest. As well as that, we provide education about heritage and industrial methods and skills of the area. We're a registered charity and raise funds through donations, charges for train rides, raffles and sausage sizzles, and through applications to applications for funding from entities such as lotteries, mission and local charitable trusts. We are an industrial museum that complements the Hokitika Museum and helps to attract visitors to Hokitika. And we're registered with Te Papa as a museum. We are also the Hokitika branch of the New Zealand Men's Shed organisation. The entire collection, other than some items on loan from organisations or individuals, is actually the property of the Westland District Council. We don't keep accurate numbers, but conservative estimate from our visitors book is that we last year had in excess of 10,000 visitors. Over the last 2 decades, our collection has grown and the number of buildings has grown and multiplied accordingly. With the addition of the miniature railway and the development of craft displays, our visitor demographic has changed. The park has become much more family orientated. This exposes younger people to the displays and hopefully sparks some interest in at least some of them. The range of visitors gives us a chance to bring the history
of the area to them and demonstrate some skills from earlier times. One of our exhibits is the craft display. Set up originally as a temporary display, it has grown and become one of the most popular displays and provides hands-on experiences and education about craft industries. It is of special interest because it documents much of the history of the employment of women in the area. The sewing machine collection, which forms part of this display, is possibly the largest in New Zealand and is certainly of national significance. We have now realised that to do justice to this display, it needs its own space, and so we're planning a new Heritage Craft Centre. The planning and fundraising has reached the stage that we now need various approvals to make a start on the building, including from you, the council. In seeking that approval, Jan Visser suggested it would be a good opportunity to bring council up to date with our plans and aspirations for the next few years, hence our attendance here today. I think you should all have a site plan and a spreadsheet outlining our planned developments and some maintenance requirements over the next 5 years or so. And if it's okay, I'll ask Mark to speak to that.
We'll do that now, right?
Please. It's okay.
Next slide, please. It was not identifying PowerPoint, I only had 3 slides. So hopefully you can all see this, which is an aerial photograph of the site we occupy on the Brian Ward Drive up by the airport. We have a lease from the airport company, and we've occupied that site for the last more than 30 years now. If you start on the left-hand side of that diagram, for those of you who've been to the site, this will be quite familiar. There's what we call the big engine shed that has an audio-visual display inside it, and 5, 6 well-maintained and running large engines that people can go and view. A workshop, which we thoughtfully burnt to the ground about 10 years ago and rebuilt, and is now a state-of-the-art facility. The steam shed, which has not much relating to steam in it, other than the hot air that we expel. And then the Heritage and Learning Centre, which is where the crafts exhibit is at present. And for those of you who haven't gone and had a look at this, this is one of the most enjoyable elements of the park for me. And I'm a steam man, actually, not just hot air, actually steam. We see young children being taught how to use one of those old hand crank or treadle sewing machines and understand something they probably never see at home, and see what their parents or grandparents certainly used, and get a chance to actually hands-on use that stuff. It is a really, really good part of our facility. Coach House is now occupied by Stagecoach and a lot of livery material. And in the bottom, towards the bottom left-hand corner, we've got what we call the tractor shed. It has got tractors in it, but also some small engines, and a maritime centre, which is occupied by some of the vessels that ply up and down the Hokitika River and Hippo Creek, and that's later with boat. The Fire Museum, bottom right-hand corner, occupies certainly the largest collection of fire engines on the West Coast. In my personal view, if they all caught fire and disappeared, it wouldn't worry me in the slightest. So it's an expensive waste of space, but that's the way it goes. And then the extreme right-hand side, you've got the railway line, which is, I have to admit, initially I felt something of an extravagance, but it is undoubtedly a real focus for the park now, and has created a revenue stream for us, which we never anticipated. And we're very grateful for the effort that everyone has put into that. So if we go to the next slide, this is what we'd like to do in the next few years. Bear in mind that some of us may not be here to see the last line on this. But the first thing is the Heritage Craft Centre. We want to build a building which is, it's in the pretty much sort of lower centre of the area. You can see Heritage Craft Centre proposed, a new building, which we have the funding for, and we'd like to build, and I think that is now subject to your approval to do this. It's always been something of concern to us that we keep adding these assets to your register. And originally we had no process by which we sought approval, we just did it. But we do now at least come tell you we're going to do something or ask for your permission. And you thankfully insure our assets and support us, which we are enormously grateful. So in the next year, we'd like to build the Heritage Craft Centre and move the collection to that. That will be followed in the year after by inside the building, a fit out that will include a mezzanine floor, and it's proposed there'll be courses held there for people who want to go to quilting and other crafts, fabric work. In addition, the railways, mentioned before, the locomotives that run on these are not trivial items. They cost a lot of money. And some of them are real collector's items. We're talking in tens of thousands of dollars for the value of one of those engines. And we have no real formal secure storage facility for them. And so it is our proposal that in 2627, we actually construct a safe storage facility. When people visit from Christchurch, they actually bring these locomotives with them and from Nelson. And it's quite an undertaking. And when they're here, we have nowhere we can put them that's dry and safe. Then we have the steam boiler collection, viewed by many in the park as just basically something that should be shifted out to the scrap man out at Tucker's Flat. But in practice, they were the space shuttles of their age. They liberated man from what he could produce, and all of a sudden you had a machine that could do something hours after hours after hours. Productivity rose enormously. They are extremely important to our collection. But at the moment, we don't have a way of preserving those, and we need cover for those. So we'll simple pole shed to cover those and maintain them. There is an interesting sort of social element to the park. Not a lot, but some of the owners. The social interaction they get at the park between the rest of us is probably a very, very important part of their social life as they move into later retirement. And the smoker room is small and, we're delighted to say, often very full. And so we'd like to make that a little larger. That also features in a slightly longer horizon. Because we never sleep and we need to think of other things, the Wretched Fire Museum does need more space because we have more fire engines we have space for at the moment. And so we are putting in plans to build that. The workshop upgrade, which abuts the existing workshop, we would expand to actually become a display area for some of our smaller engines and perhaps house generators. And we have a very small cubicle that somebody occupies and tries to hijack the people coming through the gate and get money off them. We don't charge entry, it's a donation. And we'd like to make that a little bit more formal and perhaps be able to extract more from our visitors than we do now. But we are always, as a charitable organisation, we're not there to make a profit, and I can assure you we don't. But to have something that is an entry point for the park, we think is very important. So that outlines what our plans are for the next, well, 5 years, perhaps 10. Depends on money and enthusiasm of the members. But that's to bring you, the council who own all of this, up to speed with what we think we're going to be doing for you. Oh, yes, sorry, there is something which we should talk about. Last slide. You give us some money each year to enable us to paint the buildings, replace rotten wood, and do whatever else is required to keep these assets in useful state. And so this is roughly what we're proposing we'll be spending in the next 2 to 3 years, which is, there's a grant you give us, but we'll be looking to do this work as well over the next 2 or 3 years.
Very good. So many of these developments, as Mark said, are long-term goals for which no immediate funding and plans have been developed. And they depend not only on fundraising, but on the support and enthusiasm of our members. At present, we've got, my notes say 65 members, but it's actually 66. And there are 20 to 30 regular and active members. We also depend on the support of the general public including local community, local businesses that support us, Destination Westland, and of course, the District Council. In closing, I'd like to invite you all, if you haven't been to the park, to come up for a visit, bring your family and friends and see what we're up to. I also intend in the next wee while to invite you up as a council. Perhaps on a non-public day and have a good look around and ask lots of questions and so on. So as I say, the outcome from this meeting is that we hopefully will get your permission to proceed. So if you have any questions, please, we'll do our best to answer.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. That's fantastic. So, and it's good because we have some time now for some questions from councillors. Yes, Councillor Maitland.
Through the chair, what would be the valuation of the farm you've got up there?
When we had the fire, we negotiated, the late Mr. Beecroft and I negotiated with the insurance company for the value of just the contents of the workshop. We arrived right about $75,000, which is what they paid out for us to re-equip the workshop. I would say that would be now a conservative estimate for the workshop. We now have just received a radial arm drill. I mean, the equipment today, you don't sell them on the corner down here on a Saturday morning, but someone somewhere wants a big lathe, and we have 2 little lathes with large engines. The plant equipment in there is at least worth that much. The market for the big engines, the Rustons that ran the Millstone, the Waiho, and Harry is minute, but it does exist, and trying to come up with market value is difficult. But I would say that if you took the optimum valuation for everything in there, would certainly be approaching $1 million worth of assets.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, and thanks, Mark and Bob. And I do commend you on the Heritage Park. It's certainly a talking point for all of those very small people that seem to be circulating around the community and want to go up and flag the park, trust me. But one of the things I'm just interested in, because I realise that, you know, in terms of the support that the council provides in terms of when we're talking about the maintenance rates and the insurance costs, if we're going to talk about expansion, then perhaps it's timely that we actually get around a table with our esteemed CFO, etc., and interested party from the council and have a conversation about how that looks going forward as well. So we get a complete picture of where things are and what the contribution would be, so that everybody's very comfortable about what you're doing going forward.
We do have an MOU agreement with the council, which is well out of date, and it definitely needs that round table to discuss the issues and bring it up to that.
So it's timely that we do that, so we can help support you and understand where there may be gaps or there may be alternative things that we can look at. We'd be really keen to do that as next possible. Thank you.
And it also gives councillors a chance to actually put into the visual of what you do and what you have got there, and also what we already fund up there in support of that. I do have a question before I pass over to Councillor Walker, is that I know last year or the year before we were talking about a shed, and there was a title or boundary line that was potentially going to run through the middle of a shed, which created a problem. Are we past that?
Yeah,
Past that now?
We've positioned the new development so it doesn't interfere with that.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, Councillor Walker.
Oh, just a quick question to the chair. You guys should be commended for what you built. It's an asset to the community. How's membership looking as far as bringing on younger generations to keep it going, since you're investing all this money and you're talking about growing it and turning it more into a commercial enterprise?
We've got
See where Mark's going with this?
We've actually got 4 young school kids who come up fairly regularly, and they're keen as mustard. And this has brought a whole new perspective to the park in terms of how you look after kids. We've traditionally had a few, 1 or 2 from time to time, who've come up and learned some skills. And we have a reasonably good relationship with the high school, who come up with children now and again. It depends a little bit on our own membership and whether we've got the appropriate people to look after. But it's one of the areas that we want to develop is some more regular visits from young people. And as I say, they're not likely to be members in the next few years, but hopefully it will spark an interest. And when they do have a bit of time, they join us. We do have, I don't know, half a dozen members who turn up from time to time who are still working. And so, it's a constant problem. We're regularly sort of making, in all my publications that I send out to the membership, I encourage them to try and recruit new members and so on. But it seems to, I mean, we seem to have got, and perhaps it's because I'm moving into a higher age bracket, getting a good mix is always a problem. We're aware of it and we're working on it, I guess, most of the time. We always encourage visitors to come and join up, and we get a number that join up. Some who aren't able to be active members, but they come along later on.
Thank you, Bob. And I think I've spoken to people and they've been up there too, and it's certainly, you often hear quite a few of me that are mechanically minded sort of say they're looking forward to the day, where they've got the kids have grown and left home, or they're retiring, that they can actually go on and beat themselves up there permanently.
That's pretty secure, obviously.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really hard, isn't it, for the younger ones, because they've got families, they've got everything else that takes their time. So they're looking forward to it in the future, but it's making sure we've got that line of people in the transition period to keep things moving, that you also can pass on your skills and knowledge to.
There's a marketing opportunity, I think, probably with the wives. There's a home for lost boys.
Bits we can show.
Yeah, they can be dropped off and picked up.
Yeah.
Men's creche. Yes. No, that's fantastic. Is there any more questions for these two gentlemen? No? So we will come back to you and look at coming up in the new year collectively, and we have the opportunity to walk around with you all and actually gain some more insight and ask questions. And I think there'll be more questions coming once everybody's up there and actually immerse themselves in the place. We can't help but come up with many questions on that, and it's tremendous.
And you get a free ride on the train.
Okay. That's great. So thank you very much, Mark and Bob, for taking the time to come and present to us today. It's greatly appreciated.
Extend season's greetings to you all.
And as we do to you too. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. So that would be something that would be a bit of a highlight in the new year for everybody. Any of the materials that they've pulled in there historically, it's quite phenomenal. Right, so moving on now, do we have Mr. Cadigan?
Should be coming online. Do you want to just introduction this video?
So we have Tim Cadigan, former mayor, who now works for Te Awaroa, coming to us, and he's talking about chlorination in water, underwater, as far as the new water standards and the pathway that we're taking with local water's done well. It's a discussion point that's been around the country with a lot of councils. And next month we have Paul Sutton from Haast coming to the public forum, wanting to talk to us about what Tim's going to be talking to us about shortly. So Paul was quite happy to present today and then have this from Tim. We have the presentation from Tim. We can ask him questions that we're a bit more informed when Paul presents to us next month, and we can engage with him and then go from there on this conversation. So, Barb, have you got anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that really encapsulates it. It's really just to help inform the discussion next week, and also because it's a topical issue for some of our communities right now. So we exploited the opportunity of getting Tim to speak to us with his technical expert. So it's another layer of information that might be useful. So yeah.
Lovely. So we'll just, we can't pop into another report while we wait for Tim to come online, so everything else has got a bit more time involved with it. He's got two o'clock.
That heritage park, I mean, that, in a decade time, that could be a real key tourism asset up there. Because we always need sort of rainy day activities and all that stuff's indoors. So between the museum, the heritage park, we're starting to get like a nice collection of good rainy day activities for our visitors, which is quite promising.
And that's something, it's a good comment, because I don't think it's something that we promote well. I did this in Friends Joseph is, this is something that the guests can do on a wet day.
Yeah.
And it's something that we actually don't have here collectively out in the wider
Well, on
audience.
the West Coast, they're doing some work around that. In their Real West, we've been became a representative about that, didn't they? Or so they are sort of trying to get all the frontline staff on the coast, start thinking about, you know, being ambassadors and suggesting activities for visitors, fine days and wet days.
And that's good, but I think we can't rely solely on that. We need to promote that. Because you'll always find that the turnover, the natural churn that they'll miss to spread that information. It is, it's a great site. It's incredible to them all what they've done. And it doesn't matter what state you're in, there's an awful lot of historical.
Also, just public entry building done with that. That would be, that would be the icing on the cake, really.
No, there are, so you can go up higher.
I believe it's to keep us cryogenically
Air cold.
freeze.
Oh, yeah.
We can just turn it off.
Just turn it up or turn it off.
Yeah.
Just turn it off, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for enjoying that. Cool.
Okay, give this online.
Comes online?
Yeah.
Just in the nick of time. I actually somehow managed to get muddled up between, we're doing a number of these today, so I was sitting waiting to join a Teams meeting that didn't exist in any other place other than my own mind. So thank you very much to, I think it was Diane, resent the link, recognising that I should have been there. So I've also got with me, kia ora. Hello, Helen, how are you?
Welcome.
I've got with me Jim Graham, who's our principal science advisor. So we're gonna tag team this a little bit, if that's okay.
Yep, absolutely fine. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks so much. Kia ora, everybody. Lovely to be here with you, or not here with you, lovely to be with you on the West Coast today. I wish I was down on the best island, but I'm here in Wellington, so that's just the way that is. By way of background, I sat in the seat that you're sitting in as an elected member for 13 years, 8 of them as Mayor of Central Otago, up until a year ago when I transferred up here to Wellington and joined the Water Services Authority, Taumata Arawai. Now, just if you've got the right screen there, I think I need to put it into a slideshow, don't I? Make it a bit bigger. With Taumata Arawai, we were formed as a consequence of the Havelock North water situation that occurred in 2016. You're probably well aware of it, but just by way of a very quick overview of it, water got contaminated, bore water got contaminated by sheep feces. That was in a council supply that had no chlorination at the time. Thousands of people, literally 5,000 people got sick. 40 odd people were hospitalised, and it had a significant implication in the deaths of at least 4 people. It was the biggest waterborne incident we'd had in decades in New Zealand, and it led to the passing of the Water Services Act and the formation of Taumata Arawai, now the Water Services Authority, Taumata Arawai. Now, I've done this presentation or a version of it to quite a number of councils since I've been in this role, and something that I hear from a number of these people, and in fact something that I hear from members of the public when I was a mayor, is look, 2016 is a long time ago now. It was one incident. Let's move on. So I just want to update you. This is a camping ground in Canterbury, and in September this year, so quite proximate, it had a waterborne illness outbreak caused by E. coli. Now, a couple of things to note in this situation. Firstly, this is a private scheme, so it's not a council supply. And secondly, E. coli is used in testing as an indicator species. So it's a bacteria. It indicates essentially that you've got poo in your drinking water, to put it bluntly. And also, if you've got E. coli in there, you've probably got a whole lot of other contaminants. Now, generally speaking, E. coli comes in many different types, and mostly they're relatively harmless. There'll be some types of it in your digestive system now, but regrettably, the one that got through the water treatment at this camping ground and got into kiddies' bellies was not one of the relatively harmless types. It was not benign by any stretch of the imagination. There were 37 probable causes of illness from children drinking this water. 10 were confirmed, and there were 6 kids that were put into hospital as a consequence of the bloody diarrhea, the fevers, and the just general incredibly unwellness that they suffered. One girl was in hospital, reported in the media to be in hospital for 10 days, and you know how sick you have to be for 10 days now. So we can't presume that our water supplies are safe in New Zealand, and we can't presume that our drinking, our source water is safe in New Zealand. If there's one message I get across to you today, that's what I want you to take away. Now, E. coli is tested for in supplies right across the country if you are in the regime of needing to have testing, and that's most supplies or supplies for most people. Now, it doesn't mean that all supplies are tested all the time, but every week we get the positive notifications come to us as the water regulator to say, hey, here's where your problems are. And every week I have a look at those in order to do these talks. Now, last week we had 16 E. coli notifications across the country. So what we're looking at here in this camping ground is not an isolated incident. It's an extreme incident, probably the worst waterborne illness incident we've had in New Zealand since Havelock, but it's not uncommon. 16 suppliers in New Zealand last week had fecal material in their drinking water. Now, none of these were council supplies last week, but since I've been doing these presentations, I've kept an eye on it. Around about half of the time, the fecal material is in council supplies. So we can't afford to be complacent, and that's why, realistically, we exist. Now, I'm going to be very quick on this because I want to get to Jim because he's the master of this stuff, but how you keep yourself safe as a water supplier, and your team will be all over this. Have your source water as well protected as possible. You use filtration because that will remove some problems, but you also use disinfectant, which is UV treatment because the UV will deal with protozoa such as Cryptosporidium. Chlorine is also used to deal with bacteria and viruses, and UV will deal with the Cryptosporidium and so forth. Will deal with viruses and bacteria, but where it can go wrong is in the pipe network, and that's why you have residual disinfectant. And I'm going to let Jim talk about that more. And you might have multi-barrier protection. Look, I'm going to move on to Jim right now because I've taken more time than I wanted to, because back in 2016, when I became mayor, Havelock North had happened about 2 months beforehand. And I'll be open and honest, I knew very, very little about the role that I undertook as mayor of a council in terms of being the governor of a water supplier. I really didn't know anything. And in 2017, a character came in, brought in by our staff, and talked to us for an hour and educated us in such a manner that in the 2018 LTP, it was primarily on water safety. And I've now got the honour of sitting next to this guy at work. It was quite a surprise to me when I walked in and found this chap sitting at the desk next to me. So that's Jim Graham, who you're going to hear from now, and I'm just going to mute myself and hand over. Jim, it's all yours.
Great, thanks. I'm just checking that everyone can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Jim.
Great, thanks. Look, so yes, my name's Jim Graham. I'm Chief Water Science Advisor with the Water Services Authority, Taumata Arawai. I want to run through a couple of quick slides. I want to talk about chlorine because I know that's a question that Council's been looking at. And this first slide is about when chlorine was first introduced to water supplies in 1908, and it was done because at that time there was many outbreaks of typhoid. Death from typhoid was the norm, and cholera as well. And someone hit on this idea of using chlorine in a water supply. It's a pretty interesting story in itself. I won't go into it, but the key thing is that it was so successful in stopping outbreaks of typhoid that within 6 years, just over half of all the people in the US who were served with public water supplies were getting water with chlorine in it because it had made such a difference. What we see is that it meant that the typhoid death rate just plummeted extraordinarily, and it was just due to the single intervention of adding chlorine into water that people were drinking. And there was a number of factors involved in this, but the life expectancy increased significantly. And I said there's a number of factors, but the addition of chlorine to drinking water supplies was a significant factor in improving life expectancy. And also the infant mortality rate plummeted correspondingly. And again, there's a number of factors in this, but chlorine was one of them. Infant mortality was very, very high in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and I can't remember the exact figures, but I think something like 3 out of 5 children didn't get to their 5th birthday, and infant diarrhea was probably the primary cause of death. So it's made just a simple intervention, and it's referred to as the biggest public health advance in the history of the human race. Just that single intervention, it made a huge, huge difference to people's lives and the safety of drinking water. If we took chlorine out of water supplies tomorrow, would we return to these huge typhoid outbreaks? No, we wouldn't. And that's because we have a whole lot of other interventions around water supply and other ways of treating water, including UV disinfection. But I just want to show you these things to give you an indication as to why chlorine has such an importance to water supply and why it's considered to have been the thing that's made so much difference. There's a couple of things to know about it though, and the first is the difference between what we call primary and secondary disinfection. So we use chlorine in a water supply for two things. The first thing is what we call primary disinfection, and that is to kill organisms that are in the source water. So if you're using a stream or a lake or a river or some groundwater, if it's got bacteria in it, we use chlorine as a disinfectant to kill those organisms in that water. That's called primary disinfection. We also use chlorine for what we call secondary disinfection, and that is to have a residual of chlorine in the pipe network after the treatment plant. And the intention of that is to do quite a few things actually. The first is that if bacteria or viruses get into that water in the network, and some chlorine is there to control them. And the second thing is that if you've got a residual, you can measure it. And if you lose it, the residual goes down, you know you've got a problem because that chlorine's getting used up by something like bacteria that might be in there. And the third thing is that it keeps the insides of the pipes nice and clean. Biofilm grows on the insides of pipes, and the biofilm can harbour organisms that are pathogenic. But if you add chlorine, it keeps the inside of the pipes free of biofilm. So there's a number of reasons why we do it. The simple fact of the matter is that Tim talked about outbreaks, but about a third of all outbreaks are caused by problems in a distribution system, so post-treatment. And that's why chlorine is considered useful to have as a secondary disinfectant or as a residual. We only add chlorine once in a water supply at the treatment plant, but it can do both of these things, the primary disinfection and the secondary disinfection. So it's quite useful in that way. what's interesting though is for primary disinfection, you can use other things. So for example, you can use UV light as a primary disinfectant instead of chlorine if you want to. The thing about UV light is it only disinfects while the water is exposed to the UV light, whereas chlorine has this secondary disinfection property. And so for secondary disinfection or residual disinfection, you can only really use chlorine in New Zealand. In some parts of the world, particularly the US, they use what we call chloramination, which is a variant of chlorine. But in New Zealand, we just normally stick to chlorine. When it comes to exemptions, we, under the legislation, can provide two kinds of exemptions. A general exemption, which exempts a supply from primary and or secondary disinfection. In other words, it can exempt a water supplier from any part of the Water Services Act that a water supply has duties under. So it's quite broad. A residual disinfection exemption is just about an exemption from the secondary or the residual disinfection. So they're two quite different things and different purposes. On the next slide, the other thing I wanted to cover was this change to the legislation, and this is very important for water suppliers that are considering seeking exemptions. And it was passed just this year as an amendment to the Water Services Act, and it covers the purpose of exemptions. So this is new, and the key here is that it says that the Water Services Authority can only issue an exemption where to either a general exemption or for residual disinfection, where doing the thing that's being exempt, for example, let's say residual disinfection, is impractical, is inefficient, is unduly costly, or is unduly burdensome. And so when we receive an exemption application from a water supplier, the water supplier must explain to us why, for example, having chlorine is impractical, inefficient, unduly costly, or unduly burdensome. And if the water supplier can't demonstrate one of those four things, we can't grant the exemption. We are under the law, we're not permitted to grant the exemption. And so where we have a situation where water suppliers say to us, our community doesn't want chlorine, they don't like the taste and the odor, that doesn't come under one of those four things. And so it's very difficult for us to grant, or it's not possible for us to grant an exemption simply because people don't like chlorine, they don't like the taste and odor, or for some reason they don't want it in their water. So that's a restraint that we have under the legislation. And of course, we do those things taking account of the nature of the drinking water supply and the characteristics of the water supplier or class of the water supplier. So I just thought I'd outline some of those things that may help you with your discussions, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Jim, that's, yeah. Questions, please. Councillor Maitland.
Yes, I'd like to ask, I see in the table of different levels that can be found in drinking water in New Zealand, how many councils test for trihalomethanes in chlorinated water? I see there's a limit that should not be exceeded. Is that often that is tested for?
Yeah, so that's a good question. You're talking about what we call disinfection byproducts, and when you add chlorine to a water supply, it combines with organic material and whatever that organic material might be, but including bacteria, and that produces what we call a disinfection byproduct. And trihalomethanes is one of those species. All water suppliers in New Zealand, serving more than 500 people, are required to test for those disinfection byproducts and provide the results to us, and we look at those results. There's a wee bit of a background to this. it's kind of interesting. Back in the 1970s, there was quite a bit of research about what people considered adverse health effects of disinfection byproducts, and it led the Dutch government to pursue a path at considerable cost, I might say, to having chlorine-free water supplies, and they've done that. There's been a lot of research since, and the current view from the World Health Organization is that at the level of the maximum acceptable values, or what they call guideline values, and their maximum acceptable values that we have adopted, the level of risk to health is negligible if it exists at all. And so that's why we have those maximum acceptable values. Above those maximum acceptable values, there is a small health risk. It's considered that below those maximum acceptable values, there isn't a health risk, and we require all water suppliers over 500 people to test for those disinfection byproducts and ensure that they don't exceed those maximum acceptable values.
To the chair, there was a meta-analysis study that came out from Emily Health. She's the lead author in the paper from Sweden on cancer rates from trihalomethanes, and their conclusion was that concentrations of as low as 40 parts per billion can cause bladder cancer to be increased by 33% and colorectal cancer 15%. In New Zealand, we have a bit of a scourge on bladder cancer. It's one of the highest in the world in bowel cancer. What are your thoughts on that? And have you had a look at that meta-analysis?
Yeah, I have, and my role in the organisation is to stay abreast of the science around water supply, and I do look at these studies, and I don't want to open a can of worms, but it's not dissimilar to the question around nitrate in drinking water, and the reality is that it's an area that's contested, and yes, there are studies that point to adverse health effects, and there are other studies that suggest that there is lesser health effects or no health effects. At the end of the day, the Water Services Authority is not a health organisation. We're not a health authority. That's the Ministry of Health's job. And so while we stay abreast of these things, we don't make decisions based on the health information. We take a lead from the Ministry of Health. And so the job of the Ministry of Health is to look at all of that data and set the maximum acceptable values that we use. So while it's interesting we stay across it, at the end of the day, it's the Ministry of Health's job to determine what the acceptable levels are. And our job is to simply regulate those levels with water suppliers.
Thank you, Jim, for that. It's good to have that clarified too. Thank you. Any further questions for Jim, please? Or for Jim? No?
I'm going to pass all of them over to Jim anyway, Helen.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case, Jim. That's all good. No, look, really appreciate you giving us the time today for this. I think you're well aware that we've got, the community member wanting to look at the exemption process, but we've got to make sure we get this right. We've also got to understand the rules and the boundaries that we've got to operate within with this as well, because it's not just about what we might aspire, it's about protecting the communities. I've had gastroenteritis with a 10-month-old baby in Greymouth when the water was contaminated, and it was absolutely scary. It was just so terrifying. There was nothing I could do but watch him in his hospital bed on a drip and hope to how they turned the corners. And I just watched other children being delivered to the hospital continuously for 2 days. And that was contamination of the water. That's going back some time ago, but it is absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
It's amazed me how often in this job, Helen, that I've met people who call themselves survivors of Havelock North who are still suffering ongoing health implications from 2016. So it's the good work that staff do at councils that stops that from happening, and alongside the regulations that are in place, and that's why all those things are there. Because it's easy to say there isn't a problem when the problem's controlled, and it doesn't mean that the problem just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay. Last question.
Chair, when was chlorination introduced in New Zealand?
I'm going to say 1954, but Jim, I'm going to pass to you on that one. When was chlorination introduced in New Zealand? You're on mute.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's not a particular day that it was suddenly introduced in New Zealand. And in fact, up until just a few years ago, we still had some quite large water supplies that were not chlorinated. In fact, the drinking water standards for New Zealand, when the Ministry of Health was the regulator, had provisions which allowed water suppliers to use deep groundwater without chlorine at all. And the Havelock North inquiry was very critical of that. In fact, they described it as unsafe and unsound as an approach. But water supplies began being chlorinated in the late 40s in New Zealand. Or mid 40s, and it's carried on up until and continues today.
Thank you, Joe.
One more question.
Last question.
To the chair. The aquifer water available in Petone, in Speech Street, you familiar with it? You can pull up and fill up your own aquifer.
Yeah, I am familiar with it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that has an exemption, or do you know how that's set up?
Yeah, I do. I know it well, actually, because I live very nearby it. So that water supply doesn't need to be chlorinated because the Water Services Act says that a water supply must have residual disinfectant if it has a reticulation system, and that's the pipe network. And so that situation in Petone, they take water out of the ground and they provide it to a couple of taps. So there's no pipe network. So they're not required to have chlorine in that water. And it's what we call a community water station. And we have requirements for community water stations in our rules, and it is simply, and this is the case there, they take the water from the ground, they pass it through some cartridge filters to remove any sand or grit, and then they disinfect it with UV light. So it's a pretty standard cartridge filtration UV treatment system, and then that water is fed to those taps. So it has primary disinfection. And this is what I was saying before. It has primary disinfection, which is UV, which will kill any microbes that'll be in the source water. But because it doesn't have a pipe network, it doesn't need secondary disinfection. And that's a really good example of the difference between primary and secondary, and where you need primary and where you need secondary.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that. Look, there's some really good questions, and the information coming forward is actually really good. What I'm just wondering too, though, is that, as I said, we've got a resident from further south wanting to speak to us next month about exemptions to water. I think we have that presentation, and I think then if there's further questions, would it be possible with Tim, would you guys be available at a future date for further, because this would help us, I think, immensely.
Absolutely, Your Worship, and I'd love to come back even beside that and talk about the other work we've done, because we're focusing on just the drinking water today. But we can schedule that, and we can talk generalities if we don't need to, but we can certainly talk the specifics. So you tell us the date, and we'll be there.
I really appreciate that, Tim, because you know, we all want to get our heads around this and understand the risks and obligations and what we're bound by with it. So I can see that we're potentially going to come back after January's meeting and perhaps have more questions, but we can get some questions through to you as well.
Yep.
So that we can have a really good discussion going forward. So really appreciate your time today, guys, with that, and we'll come back to you. I think that's probably quite definite.
Absolute pleasure, Helen, Your Worship, and look, just good luck to everybody. Certainly turbulent waters ahead in the local government space, but change brings opportunities as well. So, good luck. Well done being there. Sometimes I come into these rooms and talk to you folk and feel a bit of a coward because I left, but no, there's a lot ahead of you. So all the very best, and have a Merry Christmas, and I hope you all get a good break through it all.
Thanks, Tim. Really appreciate your time, and thank you, Jim. And yeah, have a good Christmas yourself, and look forward to catching up in the new year. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you. That's good. Yeah, well, I think we'll be having them back for further questions and answers time, because this is going to help us immensely. But also too, I think as we progress, we'll have a presentation in January, but I think as you get questions that you can't find the answers for or the information for, take note of them and we'll flip them through to them so that we can be quite specific when we get them back to the table again. So don't hesitate to send questions through or save them, and we'll correlate and send them through once we confirm the next connection with them. Brilliant. Right, so moving on to staff reports. Stephen, thank you very much. The financial report. Your second one. Welcome.
Thank you, Worship.
And that's on page 20 to 35 for those still looking for the paper.
Thank you. So I'll take the report as read, but it'd be helpful to council. I'll just run through a couple of highlights of the report. And also I think it's in the last meeting that this is the standard format, but you'll probably notice there are a couple of extra pages. So these are being added in because they couldn't be included until the accounts were approved by council. Because they relate to the financial position of the council, which relies on opening balances, and also on the impact statement, which basically shows revenue, grant funding, expenditure and capital expenditure. So these reports couldn't have been included until council had approved the accounts. That's why they were missing. So these, again, are still not in the format how I'd like to present them, but these are kind of standard numbers that should have been included. I guess just to kick off, basically just to say that, we have moved into surplus now, so the council's reporting $1 million surplus. Again, it's a 1.8 million budget forecast. So there is an 800,000 variance. You'll have noticed probably in the accounts that one of the main reasons for this is actually a $500,000 depreciation variance in the month. Being totally honest with council, it relates to an error within the budget that I'm currently investigating. I can't understand why the number is missing from this period, but the depreciation numbers in the long-term plan don't appear to make sense for this month. So I'm investigating to find out what that is. Just to state though, the depreciation is an accounting entry, so this is not a cash impact, it's purely an accounting entry. So I just need to get to the bottom of what's causing it. I'd hoped to have had it cleared before this meeting, but unfortunately, this time of year, I'm missing several more of my team as they've already gone on annual leave for Christmas after spending a lot of time getting the report together. So we eventually have got a break so they can come back refreshed in the new year. So I will get to the bottom of that. What I would like to note as well is the swaps variance has decreased. So in last month, we reported 470k loss against swaps. That's now reduced down to 162,000. So again, just to kind of point out as what I was trying to say in the last meeting, that as time goes on, the swap should vary and should continue to work towards zero. That's not to say, obviously, that it won't increase in future months, but it has reduced at the moment. So that's one good point to note. Just going back, so actually one of the things that was added in, sorry, I skipped ahead, just on the metrics. There's a new one added at the end of the metrics, which is on page 2 of the report, called Essential Service Ratio. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but this basically just relates to how much capital expenditure the council performs and how much it depreciates. So I'm sure you're probably all aware that depreciation is the erosion of assets over time. So the point of this ratio is that we repair our assets so that they never actually wear out. This is the essential service ratio, so it relates to water services and roading. So the purpose obviously being is that if, what we're saying so far is we've depreciated £2.3 million up to November. So basically assets have eroded over time by 2.3 million. And council has spent 2.2 million to repair them. So it's basically just holding us steady. we are slightly off the ratio, so we should be at 100% through a 96, but it's a 4% variance, which is 100,000 K, so it's not significant really at this stage, and it will improve obviously as time goes on. We do more capital expenditure obviously in the beginning of the summer periods. Obviously in the winter it's more difficult for the district asset teams to carry out work. So just feeling through, I'll come back and take questions if I want to, but the other two bits that I've added in are there's a funding impact statement, which basically, as I said, is showing all of the sources of revenue, including grant funding, council expenditure. Obviously, council then sets its target, so it has surpluses that it then funds capital, and then where there's a shortfall, it then has to go and borrow. So this basically is that explanation. Apologies, the first three columns on that table should say that they're a full year. So final column is November year to date, but what you're actually comparing to a full year figures. Apologies, when it got copied and pasted into the report, the top heading disappears, so it should say those are full year figures. So it's not showing you year to date, it's just showing where we expect to be. And then over the page is the other extra table, which is the statement of financial position. So this is basically all of council's assets and liabilities. The only one I really wanted to point out that the significant variance on is we have for the financial assets of 8.8 million. So a 3 million variance against 5. This is actually just relates to council controlled organisation loans. So when the council controlled organisations take out loans, we show the loans as a asset because we've actually lent them the money. But then conversely, you will see over the page, we have a similar number on where is it on other under liabilities, and that is also out by the same number or similar number, which is basically just so those two numbers cancel each other out. It's just we have to show that we've lent the money to the organisations, but they also owe it back to us. So that's basically the only additional changes. But then I'll take any other questions.
Questions for Steve, please. Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, I think you've kind of answered my question right at the beginning, but this report's changing after we have our workshop next year, right?
Yeah, that's the intention. Yes, the January. Well, with the January, we're going to have the January workshop, and then we can find out what council would like to see, and then obviously we'll improve the reports and change them.
So the only thing I wanted to kind of flag was to distinguish one-off variances and kind of structural overspends so that they're not baked into the rates going forward.
Yeah,
through that down.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, as part of the budgeting process, that's something that we look at. And I think you'll see from the timetables we have budget workshops planned in for February as well. So that's something that definitely look at. We've got 2 sessions in February, so that's definitely things we'll be looking at.
Councillor Peter.
Through the chair, common notes page, note 4, fees and charges, total costs supposedly be 54K over due to higher than expected tourism and escalations. Is this something we're seeing constantly? Does that mean have we got an issue here with not budgeting enough? Obviously, in that space, we're not having control over that, or it's something that seems to be coming up every night.
The chair, the central government increased the levy charges on us, so there's a bit of a delay between when we have it and you also get a spike during like white season. All of a sudden you get a whole different pile of people come in and your tourism waste goes up, which is big.
So just through the chase and clarify, no report is showing a revenue overspent, as in we've got more revenue than we expected. It's not a cost to council, so it's actually we've collected more revenue rather than being a charge. So yeah, sure. No, it's okay. It's why I want to change the report.
Yeah, well, it's better now.
It's not. No, yeah, it's we forecast we would receive revenue of X, but we actually received 54,000 more into council, so we actually collected more revenue. It's higher. Yeah. So my preferred wording that we'd like to change is that it's better than or worse than, and then it's very clear.
Through the chair, we do get definite peaks and troughs. Yeah, and waste.
And through the chair, also asked Bill in talk 7 about how we can think about putting charges where, visitors are heading into our toilet facilities, etc., and we're getting huge influxes from buses, etc., as well as and then trying to accommodate the servicing of those toilets. But that's a bit of a work in progress, and I'm happy to talk a bit further about that. But I think we've got to have some user pay process.
And if I can on that, you know, let's use it to a lot of areas with that. I think that's what we're, you know, we're not going to get the lead from central governments. We're going to take the lead ourselves on how we manage this and how we take that burden off ratepayers. So yeah, that's something we look forward to that work coming forward. But Stephen, I would like to acknowledge the changes, the depth of the work that you've done going through historical information. I know we're on the right path going forward, and I know it's going to take time to get there. Looking forward to the change and reports coming forward, but just so pleased that the budget and about financial components of business. And it's looking at a really, really accurate picture coming forward. So thank you, because I know it's been a pretty intense, heavy road that you've had to manipulate your way down. So thank you. Sorry.
Right.
That's amazing.
Through the chair, just a silly question. How do you explain the liquidity risk that their overall asset base?
Yeah, so on the one of the ratios, was it? Yeah. So basically, through the chair, sorry, this is it's basically looking at the total value of loans that we have available, how much that is then held as cash, because we have to borrow money in advance. So we end up borrowing money for capital works programs or where we have shortfall in funding. We might not necessarily use it immediately. So we basically take the total loan values and then deduct the amount of money that we're holding as cash that we can get to quickly. So I think the best way to think about it is it's a ratio looking at, we have to have a certain amount of money in the bank versus the amount of loans we have. And it's basically 10%. So if we have £1 million worth of loans, we need to have $100,000, dollars. First one. Yeah. If we have $1 million worth of loans, we have to hold $100,000 worth of cash. So we have to have 10, whatever the loan value is. Again, if we had a 100 million loan, we would have to have $1 million in cash. So that's the easiest way to look at it. But it's just, as you said, it shows our ability to repay how much money the council actually physically has in bank account.
Just a quick question to the chair. Do you have an in-house goal as to your percentage for employee benefit expense?
Through the chair, it's set in the LTP. So obviously the next time we'll be able to properly review it is in the next cycle. It's not necessarily set as a percentage, and there's a way it's been budgeted in the past is we always ensure that it doesn't rise unexpectedly beyond revenue expectations. And so there's not a specific target, but it's based on, I see the bells. What you'll notice is if you do look back, it has actually jumped, but that's obviously because of the changes we've made by bringing eyesight and other services, the museum back in house. So it was always there. It was just in our CCOs, whereas it's now plotted in us. So, but there's not a specific target search for them. As low as possible. So, yeah.
Councillor Martin. Even the grants outstanding, the ones with projects.
Yeah.
Back in the 10th of October, what's the time frame for receiving?
Yeah,
those
so
funds?
through the chair, actually, thank you, Councillor Martin. Actually, that's one of my points I didn't bring up. We've actually received the £500,000 funding. So we have received $1 million for milestone 2 for Peak Airport. The second milestones, which the 200,000 should have been received. We're actually chasing. So I've got
Through the chair. Yes, we had a meeting with them this morning. They've said that they'll be coming in January.
It was just a timing situation, wasn't it? Yeah. Close yes, the building consents, the arrears or the outstanding values are quite high.
Yeah, so through the chair, I've actually been looking at this. So under building consent, it actually includes building consent, but it also includes other items as well. So it has the thank you, yeah, remember the name for them included. So and it's actually the surveys that are the main arrears. So of the 72,000 that's currently outstanding, 26,000 actually is notice to fix. So obviously this is where we've issued notices to people to rectify their properties and issued a penalty. The issue we have obviously where they don't pay them is we then charge them interest on that penalty, and then they receive penalties on the penalty for failure to pay. And these are the ones who are having difficulty. Council does take legal action against people when they don't make payments against them, but they're quite stubborn. And of that 90-day 26,000, practically all of that actually relates to notices that we've served. So it's not necessarily building consents themselves that are causing the problem. It's where we've issued notices of this. It still needs to be resolved, obviously, and we still need to collect the funds. So it's something we have a credit controller who is dealing with that, and we have a dedicated recovery agency that we're using to funds.
Janelle, have you got any questions? You're on mute. You see that? Oh,
No.
no. All good. Raise your hand if you've got something though.
Oh, can you hear me now?
You can. Thanks, Janelle.
Yeah. No, I'm all good, thank you. I'm just, yeah, I've got bad internet, so I'm just listening.
All right, thank you. Right, any further questions for Stephen? Mrs. Martin, Councillor Martin.
The heading leadership, what does that involve? How's that broken down? Not income.
Yeah, through the chair. Is that on? Sorry, where are you? So just apologies.
There's a range.
Well, I think it will be. Is there one of the statements?
Do you want to answer to it?
Sorry, those headings are taken directly from the LTP, and those are taken directly from the LTP. So there's a range of things that's probably just going back and just having a quick look. Because there are a range of them that sort of, and they're not, I'd have to say to you, they're not particularly intuitive.
And it's potentially something that Stephen's going to be tweaking as we progress so that it is more relevant information for us. Anything further for Stephen, please? No. Right, the resolution is that the financial performance report for 30th November 2025 be received. I move and receive it, please. Councillor Manera? Councillor Mackenzie? No. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Janella. Lovely, thank you. Right, moving on to the confirmation of appointments to community committees and organisations. Barbara, the next one, please.
Right, actually, this is one of three of the next two agenda items after this one, which form the final part of the sequence of the new triennial governance administration types of the processes. As you will remember previously, council resolved around the committee structure, the meeting schedule, and the committee chairs and membership. And this paper is looking at the leading groups, committees, external committees of groups, and liaison with community organisations. And that provides the overview of those councillors who have been allocated to those particular areas. I would say, I'm presuming in Appendix 1, folk have had an opportunity to have reviewed it, and discussions required. There is one small typo that we do have to amend today, apologies, and that is for the local waters done well, for the recommendation that the membership is here to worship the Mayor, Deputy Mayor Verdon, and it's meant to read Councillor Gillette instead of Councillor Maitland. My apologies, which gives a continuity, purely because of the continuity of the so if we could agree that that amendment is agreed today, would be particularly helpful as we go forward with the group meetings. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And the other amendment we do need to acknowledge is the fact that I've been omitted from the Tito Bettini plan. So if that can be included as an amendment to place. Now further to, are you rolling on through to all the?
I'm happy to go to move for the next agenda.
Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair. I just wanted to ask about the district licensing committee. How are they, the members, how are they appointed? And given that they're all up in April, how are they, are the new set appointed?
Are they just?
They're appointed for a term of 5 years, so, oh, you mean, so April next year they're off?
Yeah.
Um,
Who are they and how did they get there?
it's an external process, their appointment, and that's quite a stringent one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is.
I think
So it's
we,
external to the council completely.
Yes,
I think we
yes.
feed into it, but I don't think we have any, that it's
No.
controlled by the license.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, and Murray Clearwater came to us, I think, last year or the year before. And that was, yeah, because before we had an interim gap where I ended up having to do a lot of that, filing off authority work. So, it's an external process for the appointments of these people. It is a very stringent process that they go through, getting for the committee. The other thing I will say, bar the main committees, or T5 and Tenny Plan and the Transport Committee, the Revenue Districts, Future Friends, etc. They're pretty much set in stone, but the other liaison roles of community groups and the groups and committees on the, this is really just to get us going as a council, and we can move people around, increase roles and abilities as everybody gets settled around the table, so they are not set in concrete. We can come back and amend those as we progress.
Do you want to prove a review period on it in terms of, would you like to get it after a year?
I think so.
Just in terms of giving people a seat for getting the feet under the table and then having an opportunity to decide whether that's all right. Is it useful?
I think that is, thank you. Well, I think we will come back and we'll review that and see if you'll have a conversation with everybody and discuss the committees going forward and make any amendments, changes from there. Oh, and then on page 41, this is something that I was not aware of when I did the appointments last triennium. Internal appointments for working groups and committees. We've got the Central Business District Working Group. In the terms of reference from that, it actually has it broken down to Hokitika Ward Councillor as a committee member, which I think I must have just appointed, not actually realising that was the case, or we wrote up the terms of reference, we're not sure which way that one went. So for the Hokitika Ward Councillor being on that Central Business District Working Group, Councillor Mackenzie was keen to.
No, I think.
Northern Ward, sorry, it was
I
Councillor,
would-
yes, it was Councillor
the
Walker,
tender.
yes, yes, it was Councillor Walker.
I'm happy to be on that one. I do, yeah, some questions for you later on, but that's fine.
And before anybody comments, this was said, he's got a vested interest in the town, it's,
Yeah.
that can actually be a value input into it, as well as keeping that neutral component and that perspective
As
going
long as there's
forward.
no perceived conflict.
No, well, sometimes it's of benefit to the discussion and it gives us the insight.
Through the chair, it is a working group and we can manage the conflict of interest as we go through. So it's not as formal as a subcommittee or a standing committee, but we will manage the conflict of interest. If
I'll definitely bring a different perspective to the group.
Yep. So that's that noted as well.
I'll just.
Okay, so I think that's it. So with that, the resolution is that the report be received and that council confirms the appointments to committees, community organisations, liaison roles and other appointments for the 2025-2028 triennium, noting the amendment to page 38 and page 41. Yes, so do I have the representative, please? On that, Councillor Monero, thank you very much. Councillor Maitland, thank you very much. All in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. We'll move on to the next report.
So, this
Oh, hang on. That's in terms of reference.
Yeah, these are the terms of.
Yes, okay, that's good.
So the next report is considering the terms of reference for the committees and the subcommittees. Hopefully, both of them will get you into review those. I think we have significant changes from the previous terms of reference. Can I just highlight though for councillors around the table that while we put up the Risk and Assurance Committee in its current and I know this will come up in the next item, is that I will be looking to do a refresh of the Risk and Assurance Committee in terms of sharpening up its focus. And so it may well be that while we are content for this to go forward, or this paper going forward, we may come back to council to say we'd like to refresh it to reflect better practice and best practice. So I just wanted to put that on your radar, so you know that might be the only one that might require a little bit of tweak once we have an opportunity for a chair to do that. Thank you. Otherwise, I think that these questions, councillor.
Sorry, councillor Collette.
Just a query on the wastewater treatment plant, our supplementary. When we were talking about the last explore, like a placeholder, that I see in the terms of reference, it does have meetings scheduled not less than quarterly.
We left it as it was, councillor Gillette, with a view that we knew that we were coming to the conclusion of this committee, and that we would hope that that would be dissolved after the paper coming to the council regarding the Hokitika wastewater and its steps. So we didn't try and change it, we just left it standing as it was, with a view that the paper's coming forward in the early new year, and that it would be recommended that the work of this committee has been completed. If the council accepts that, then it would be dissolved. I'm just waiting for this statement to.
I just wonder whether it actually really has anything to do with that. That issue couldn't come up to full council now. It's probably gone through that.
I think we have to resolve it. There has to be agreement to resolve it, and that will come up through the paper. But rather that we did it through the paper, because that gives a full purpose of the paper. They still have to present through the paper. There's information that comes up from that subcommittee to the council. It would be difficult if we dissolved it now. How do I bring it through to the council?
Well, it could just come to you. There's a working group and so that. Well,
I think the sequence might be disrupted. And it's not material, it's not going to cost us any time to leave it in and let it come through the paper and do a proper process. Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's still scheduled quarterly, but that can be managed. So that my main concern was that meeting and that group continued to meet and continued to cost council. So it was why I pointed that out.
The paper should be coming through to the council. It's either in January or it's been pretty special. I think it's January. That being the case, that would dissolve it at that point and engage any further audience meeting.
Through the question, not whether the committee that's costing money, of course, it's consultant.
Well, that part of the process has been completed. We're now waiting for it to come to the paper. I take your point.
I'm just correcting council there, it wasn't the cost of the council. It's the cost of the process. So.
Well, there is a cost, but the big cost is the consultant, correct? There's still a cost here, it's taxpayers, correct, there is still a cost involved.
Yeah, that was what I said. Yeah.
Right, so.
So the concern is that the cost of the issue that we say.
No, the consulting costs.
It's obviously correct. So yes.
No, that's.
Okay. So everybody quite happy with where we're at with that? All right, so I have to move from second to it so that we can resolve that the report be received. And part two of that is that council adopts the terms of reference for the following committees and subcommittees: standing committees, chief executives review committee.
Sorry, do we need to fill that vacancy, Northern Water Councillor vacancy on the tenders?
Yes, we do, and that will be filled by councillor Mackenzie as an all representative. and he has agreed to that. There's another amendment in there, noting that. Standing committees, Chief Executives Review Committee, the Council Control Organisation Oversight Committee, Risk and Assurance Committee. Subcommittees being Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant Project Oversight Subcommittee, Tenders Subcommittee, noting the appointment of Councillor Mackenzie as a Northern Ward Councillor to the subcommittee. And 1.3 to this is that the terms of reference for the committees be updated in the delegations manual. 1.4, that local governance statement be updated. So I'm going to remove your second, please, so we can resolve us all those 4 points. Councillor Burden, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gillett, thank you very much. All in favour? Against? Carried. Right, moving on to Manatu Whakatanga partnership agreement, and if I will speak to this, please.
Again, this is to get the council agreement for the new triennium for this partnership agreement. I believe this is the third time that it's been rolled over. The second time it did have some amendments before it was put forward. This time they have not made any amendments. I believe that both Councillor and Paul had an opportunity from the respective committee to make comments on the second iteration. We've not tried to make any amendments for this one, but roll it forward from that point.
And the other thing too with this is that rather than have this later into 2026, 2027, as has happened in the past, I would like us to see the signing of these agreements happen before we get to the Christmas period after the new training starts per council, because they are the agreements that bind us at the table. So any questions on the report? So the resolution is that the report be received and that council confirms the Manatu Whakatanga partnership agreement between Te Raranga o Ngāti Waewae and Te Raranga o Makawhio, together known as Petini Ngaitahu, and Western District Council Te Kahui o Petini for the 2025-2028 triennium. All in favour? I need to move this for that first and foremost, you are all in favour. Move for a second, please. Councillor Burden, thank you. Councillor Manera, and all in favour, thank you. Now, what I would like to do is that we officially sign this now at this meeting, so that it's a done deal. Pass here. Right, so there's a bit to sign. Yeah, sorry, there's 3 agreements. You've got one. Paul's got one. Oh, I will just play the shuffle in the middle. Tell you what, I'll do mine on the end. Next, we'll go so there's an official agreement per party, and then the official certificate, which the Whakahiri Magic has just signed, will go into a frame up on the wall, to which I'm looking forward to have photos of the respective maraes to join them. Right, who's it signed? Oh, hello, Paul, it's yours. Sorry, to be signed. Right, I'll do that for you. And you've signed. She hasn't signed that, but she has. So that's all 3 signed. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. It's nice to have that signed and completed. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, next item on the agenda is the Hokitika Racecourse street names, and we have the Facilities and Properties Manager, Jan Visser, here to present to us. Welcome, Jan. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll take this report with me, but I'll just highlight 1 or 2 items. I've got a drawing that also shows The proposed street names, Park Street and Dalton Street is really just a continuation of the current streets that was there, which is why we propose to keep the names there. During the community consultation session that we had at the Boys Brigade in November 2024, there were some questions from the community to ask if some of the street names at the racecourse could be named after prominent figures or horses that had involvement at the Okotika racecourse, which was taken up by the developer, and quite a number of suggestions was sent through to the developer. The Crestview development is not a council project, it's the developers doing it privately. So the suggestions for the names came from them through to us, and we just presenting it through the council. Some of the other suggestions that came through was Stopford Drive, Ruthven Way, Keenan Lane, Stevenson Way, and Bed Bradley Place. The developer decided on the Keenan Lane due to their rich history in the racecourse. Obviously, Harry Keenan being involved with the racecourse for more than 70 years, but also Harry's grandfather was a well-known horse trainer at Woodstock. His father was heavily involved in the racing club, and also Jim Keenan was an official at the Westland Racing Club in the 70s. The reason for this is because of their heavy involvement at the racecourse is why the developer chose to go with Keenan Place above some of the others. The plan also is that at the end of the project, they would put up a panel showing some of the history of the street names and where they come from, just to give a bit of background on that. I'll also note that there will be more streets that's going to be built when the next stages start. So when we do the retirement villas and the care facility, there will be more roads or streets that will need to be named. So if there's any that's not named in this Crestview development, there certainly is scope for more at a later stage.
Thank you very much for that, Jan. And also, too, we still have lot 2, the future of that at some stage to be taken over. I think it is commendable from our perspective that the developer respects the land up there and what its background is, and is wanting to keep that within the scope of the names that are held there. And of course, that is the thing too. And just also for a bit of information to help you with this, the reason a road is a public way connecting 2 points, as is a street. So you're governed by the type of road, lane, drive, place, or whatever determines what you can and can't use on that, whatever name you have. Jones Place, whatever. Jones Place as a cul-de-sac cannot be a road or street because it does not have a throughway to it. So there are definitions that bind us with what we can use as far as that terminology goes. Our job today is to sanction the names chosen, bearing in mind that the developer of the subdivision cannot get their titles and consent signed off, allowing the sale of the sites to continue, and we've got builders and developers waiting to start that process too. So it is starting to cost investors money as far as the delays go. So while it's not a risk analysis, part of the risk analysis to council, it is something that we do have to get on and do to assist the developers rather than push it back into mid next year. So you've heard, you read the report, Jan's spoken to the report. Is there any further questions, please, for Jan? We're going to toss a coin. All right. Councillor Martin.
Yeah. And the Keenan Place, was it like generic rather than specific to Harry Keenan?
Well, like I said, I think Harry Keenan had 70 years involvement at the racecourse, but because of the family's rich history at the racecourse, they decided to go with Keenan Place to honour the family instead of the person alone.
And that was the developers?
Yes, yes. All the recommendations went straight through to the developer, and they sent it through to us with what they requested the street names to be.
It's actually been a fascinating process because I've learned a lot about the history of the racecourse as far as involvement, because I knew about Harry and his 70 years. But I didn't know that the Keenan family had such a heritage in the horse racing here as far as trainers. And very highly respected people within the horse racing industry at that. So yeah, it'd be great to actually have the information, the history on farm names that we end up with on a platform, so people can actually feel the place and get that perspective of what we've got, what we have here. Any further questions, please? Oh, sorry, Councillor Maitland, you had one before.
Yeah, I did have one, but yeah, I did read a small submission from someone that suggested that a lot of people had input into the race course and its whole history, because it goes back a long way, I think well over 100 years. And I can understand you wouldn't want to call it racetrack drive to promote boy racing and things like that. But sometimes I think we have a predominance of people's names for streets, and I really like streets like Shallow Rush Road up in the Blue Square there, where, you know, because I think a lot of the street names around Hokitika, I wouldn't have a clue who they were back in the past. And sometimes I think they just get their name there because they're, you know, up in the upper echelons of governance, whether or not they did anything good or not. And I'd like to see more predominance in street names that actually give flavour to the area rather than someone else's name. But that's just my personal point of view.
No, and that's not even appreciated, Paul.
In a similar vein, I have to say from the outset, of course, that as a revenue board, I think that the name Keenan place is admirable. But given the connection is, Keenan Senior was the note, it was a horse trainer that we had stables that we got across from the pub. And then Mick Keenan was a well-known successful trainer in his own right. Jim Keenan was the president of the Western Racing Club for a number of years. Harry was a member, as we know, for a long time as well. And every member of the Keenan family has had a role in the racecourse over the years. However, I think that when it comes to naming, we ought to show some restraint around the tendency to name things, in particular within short memory, because it is a club with a history of 160 years. And you don't have to go back very far, and you find others that have contributed to the development of that race course in a really major way, such as Jack Hood, for instance, that saved the race course from closure in the previous, back in the 60s, I think it was. And then there is, there have been successful trainers through that course, in recent times, even Jack Harron. But there've been a lot of names, and I'm scratching the surface. And so there's a real danger when you start to pick names and you just pick it from recent memory, that it overlooks all of that from those who walked in those shoes earlier. So, having said that, I do think that Keenan Place is appropriate given the connection, but it as an honour to the whole thing, rather than just for Harry, with great respect to Harry, of course. But I think that more general names ought to be considered in future. I mean, what's wrong with naming it after a horse that came from the area? Jim Keenan's famous poem about the bottle queen. There's all sorts of possibilities, and it could be something as silly as trifecta or quinella or something, just to really connect it back to the race course days. It doesn't have to be the person, which unfortunately that will overlook all of those others that come
Yeah, and that, you're right, that is the problem you have with that. But I do know that, the developers are using somebody that's got history and is a historian, by that is looking into the history of the course, horses, people, everything, to give more names in the future, whether they can be affiliated to the land, people involvement or whatever. So there will be a lot more coming forward in the future, as we progress with that land development, to look at, as to where we take the naming. Who's first? You, sorry, Councillor.
I think right.
No, you
Oh,
Well, I was just through the chair going to ask the provenance of Stewart Lane. Is it just Stewart's that works at the?
is the racing terminology,
Oh, okay.
because it goes to, that's right, Lane, yeah, it goes to in that direction, doesn't it? Yes, to the stewards.
I don't think it's a Scottish connection, I'm afraid.
No, I was just.
No, sorry.
They've got a family name on Keenan, but Stewart seems a bit random.
That road goes to where this.
The grandstand.
Yeah, it was a grandstand and the.
Councillor Burden.
Just from listening to the conversation here and some of the correspondence that's gone on in the last few days around this issue, I think it highlights the issue that council don't have any policy around streaming. I think it might be an opportunity. We do.
We don't. I had a look at that myself last night, and we'd like to report over it. We do have no policies. Yeah, we do. So, and I know that, that you're not supposed to name roads, streets or whatever after living people. And I know that with Holly Robertson Road, Havel Drive, and I think there was another one up there somewhere. John Olson, they were, and why I can't explain that. But everything else that's happened in there in the naming, naming rules prioritise clear, unique and locally relevant names, prohibiting duplicates, names of living people, unless exceptional contribution, and complex characters requiring developers to propose names with reasons, ideally reflecting local history or nature and following formatting rules like no apostrophes or hyphens. The goal is an unambiguous system, ensuring names are easy to say, spell, and don't clash with the existing ones in the district. That is one piece of policy. And so it comes out each name needs a reason, origin, history, theme. Council approves names based on policy, ensuring clarity and consistency for an effective addressing system. Yeah.
Through the chair. Sorry, I'm
Sorry, that was my research last night.
Councillor Bevan, because I think it would be useful for us to look at the regulation. Yes, because we've got new developments and there's some new development. And I think it would be useful if we can give some direction in terms of the communities and wider historical background that we can capture. For instance, I know at Whitby they've named a whole suburb on racehorse names that were related to the course that was there. So I think there's some work we can do to make that a little bit more relevant for Westland as a whole, rather than just, one.
Yep, stay away from names.
Yeah.
I think it's still a contingent.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to take that as an action.
Thank you. Yes, we will include that in that. So is there any further discussion on this?
So that policy should have been attached to this report.
Okay, we take that as for the future. It wasn't. But
Where you, I gather from what you just said is that this doesn't comply.
yes, it does comply. Yes, it does comply.
But taking your point, Catherine, it's probably useful for folk who don't
Yeah.
need to dig through the
Plus,
plethora of policies to actually be able to have something that's relevant to you with it. So make sure that in the future we try and achieve your expectation.
No, I did check the rules, the policy last night, just out of interest to make sure that that it was. Yes. So in the future, this will attach a policy for something like this, but I do take the CN's comment there that we need to look at that anyway, because God knows when it was actually done. Probably some time ago. Councillor Burden.
One more question. So just, through the chair, has there been any conversations with the King's family and the church that had input
when the developer recommended and it was put through, I just made a phone call to say, this is what we are proposing to present to council. Obviously, it's pending clearance approval. So I just made a phone call to say, so that they don't, it's not picked up in the council agenda. So yes, there was a phone call from us.
Any further conversation on that report? So if there's no further conversation, resolution is that the report be received and that council approve the naming of 2 newly formed roads at the Hokitika Racecourse Crestview Development as Keenan Place and Stewart Lane as per the drawing attached as Appendix 1. And also with the recommendation that the naming policy is revisited in the new year and updated accordingly. I have a mover, a seconder, please. Councillor Mackenzie, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Walker, thank you very much. All in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. It's good with working through, and thank you, Jan, very much for that report. It's good actually working through this, that we're starting to get into some more business stuff that we're actually also looking at the policies that we have as stuff, renewal and update, and there's a lot of them. So it's going to be an ongoing thing. We can't do the lot at once, but it is good that we are actually picking up on this and bringing them into the 21st century. So one bit of progress. So next we move on to the Responsible Freedom Camping Bylaw update, and we welcome Lee Webster, our new Planning and Regulatory Manager, to present on this one.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, and I will take the report as read. But just to give a bit of an overview of the purpose of the report was just to give you, as the new members, an overview of the work that was done long before I arrived here, just a few weeks ago. And freedom camping can be quite an emotive subject. As I understand, there's been quite a lot of discussion previously with regards to the challenges that freedom camping brings. There was, through 2024-2025, a bylaw that was proposed to the previous council that was consulted on, and there was significant conversation and discussion in relation to that. Following that, we were not able to get to a position whereby we could actually adopt a bylaw, and then we came to the end of the triennium, and yourselves are here now. So what we're proposing to do is, looking into January, we'll have a workshop. We'll go over what has been done, what has been said, the challenges in relation to that, what the Act allows us to do and not to do, and then get a little bit of a direction from yourselves as to what that looks like, and then we'll get back into the statutory process, basically. So we'll look at that workshop in January, as I say, as we're proposing at this stage, get that direction, and then we'll look at how we can deliver a bylaw for the next season. So we'll be looking to have that in 2026, basically. Outside of that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes.
So three questions. So this is really disappointing. We would, this was a proposal from staff came to the council last thing. We had very little time because they just realised that they didn't have a policy in place ready for the next season, which happened last season. So they rushed it through, and they did the staff did a desktop exercise, and they come up with all sorts of names and places. That some of them that were very inappropriate, such as at Bruce Bay, such as outside the toilets at Cass William, such as Arohuru, the bridge, the historic bridge reserve. And so there was a lot of unhappiness about that, the fact that we rushed through. And so we managed to get some of those removed. Others went through and through to a submission process. And then we were informed that there was such a stringent process that they had to go through. And so went through that, and we ended up with a policy that then wasn't even enacted. And it's really, really disappointing. We had to go through it all over again. wasting the time doing it all over again. And this year, this season, we don't have a policy, and we've got the usual seasonal inundation of these freeloaders that come in. They're going to be implicated and etc. in appropriate places.
Fine, thank you. Barb would like to answer that, and I would like to respond to this.
I'd have to say, through the chair, this has been a less than tidy process on all sides, actually. The bylaw is really required because we have behaviours that are less than optimum from people that don't necessarily reside in this community or within this district. And they come in, and there are multiple instances where less than appropriate behaviours have been done. Now, the bylaw will go some way to try and resolve some of that. And if my recollection is correct, Paul, the process that went through probably was really untidy, it was quite rushed. And I think that was with the best intent to try and get something on the table, regardless of where the perceptions lie. Unfortunately, what then came through was that the recommendations from the previous council had to be legally reviewed, because actually it proved that it wasn't legally appropriate to put it forward as a bylaw, and we would have put the council at risk. So I think that, bearing that in mind, we now have a different approach. We have a different set of eyes on it, and we have the ability to now, regardless of the fact that it's less than in timely fashion that we would like, to do something that actually is safe for us to do and can address the behaviours and help to moderate some of the discussion that happens in the community about these whole issues. And I'm not saying it's going to go away, because it won't. We can't control the behaviours of people coming in, but at least we can put something in that we know will provide some guide rails that are legally sound and does not put this council at risk. And so I'm heavily promoting that. I have confidence that we will get that. And hopefully, I'm sorry if it is repetitious of people, but we have a new lot of people around the table now, and they may have a different view of how they see this bylaw needing to be enacted. And I'll be very keen to include that as part of the discussion going forward.
And just to follow up from Barb's comments too, which I fully endorse, is that we ended up with quite a situation with the government developing these green cards on camper vans that prove they are certified for wastewater and everything else, which they swore were not, could not be duplicated. To find that they have been duplicated and replicated and everything else. That's nothing to find vehicles that, or a number that has been certified belonging to 18 different vehicles. So it's less than perfect. We were given some guarantees from the government that they would be assisting as far as NZMC, New Zealand Motor Caravan Association, with the bylaw, which we've also had resistance from as well. It's a really difficult situation. We don't like where it's at. We did what we were requested to do as far as having designated places. Yes, it was a bad test run, but no place is ever going to be a good place. But I fully endorse Barb's comments and the work the staff did. Yes, we're going to have to go back and reinvent the wheel, but I'm hoping this time around we're going to have a lot more insight. And I've also had conversations with the Queenstown Rotorua and Tasman mayors, and they, like us, have got the same problems, and they're quite happy to have conversations and take some form of proposal collectively to Wellington, because we're all doing it individually and it's not gaining ground. And the Minister of Tourism has acknowledged that there's problems everywhere, and she's open to a conversation. So I'm certainly there, and I'm sure Lee's happy to join me with that one, and we've got to drive it. Otherwise, we'll continue with what we've had and what we've been experiencing over years.
Hopefully we won't have toilets glued to the bottom of camper vans as a toilet facilities without any excess holes, etc. Yes, Councillor Vincent.
Through the chair, I was just wondering if Lee at the moment has the net cost to ratepayers for enforcement monitoring and compliance for this, or is that something that's going to be brought up at the workshop?
The government used to fund it. We used to actually have that funded by the government around New Zealand, and that was advantageous because we actually had people out right down through into Haast. everywhere was being monitored. So you had somebody based in France and they would do Fox through to Akarito and Whataroa. So it was quite a collective spread and that worked exceptionally well. Then the government pulled the funding. But Lee, you know.
Come through the chair, and just to answer that question, Councillor Mackenzie, that's part of that conversation that I want to have with yourselves through the workshop, because given the size of our district, it is a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, but it's something that we need to look at of how we can make that happen. And certainly, if we can link in with other councils such as Queenstown and that bordering and us, how can we work with them to make sure that we're getting the level of enforcement that we're going to need?
And through the chair, combination of their terms, it's a really important question because of the safety of those people who actually want to do the right thing and then raise it with the people who are doing the wrong thing. I really get concerned about those members of the public who are trying to do right. And there's some processes we need to really tie off around there. Last time I was worried for those folk who wanted to do the right thing and then got abused and threatened.
Yeah, through the chair, the subsidy we got from the government was approximately $300,000 to set up and $250,000 per annum for site investigations and monitoring.
Through the chair, can it be like parking enforcement? Can it go back to the person that owns the vehicle, like a rental car company?
And we're really happy to bring that through the workshop. We investigated all of that, and it was a dead end. Sorry, that's a very bad pun, but it was a dead end in the sense that there was just nowhere to go. And there were lots of avenues we explored as part of that about raising information at the site of rental, trying to do spot checks. We worked with the Motor Association quite closely at the end around what could we do to try and work together to make this happen. There's just not a good answer to it. So it's maybe an opportunity now. It's a bit more evolved that we can have a look and see if there's something, but happy to bring that to the initial budget.
And from there, it may be that we have commented on your committees, that we bring councillors that are wanting to be involved and work with Lee and having conversations with other councils and trying to really get something going. Because the biggest problem we have is that the staff here have their day jobs, as do we. And then you've got all these other components thrown in that we've got to address and take through to completion. And it's bloody hard because NZMCA are our biggest opposition, because unless we've got everything lined up with what they want, they threaten us with court. And they have done that with Queenstown, didn't they? They took them to court with that, and we don't have deep enough pockets, they do. So it just makes it hard because you just get to this stage and then in they come and then you're back to the start again. And we've just, it's been really hard. And we get very agitated about protecting our environment because it's pretty damn good and it's what people come to see. So yeah, it's hard, but we've got to get this across the line and we've got to do something that actually foresees the future. But the government's got to back us with that as well. Sorry, Councillor Adam.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd like to see council get in touch with the Gisborne council as well, because we've travelled up there in the past and they had a really good freedom campaign system. And we were really impressed with it. With our trip around the North Island, and it sort of stood out, and I think they might be able to provide some answers or some ideas for Western District Council.
Thank you. I strongly suggest you're one of the compliant council.
Okay. Thank you for that. No. Janella?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Through the chair. Thank you, Lee. I had a talk to Lee about this freedom parking, especially down Harston, Fox and Fransway. I'm up and around the Coromandel at the moment, and I've been talking to both the mayors up here about what they do, and I'll have some feedback to bring back with some ideas. But yes, I'm very happy to help put a plan in place for this time next year.
Thank you for that, Janella. Give our regards to Mokol and everybody else up there, and yes, certainly be interested in their insights and their issues, because they have had the same issues we have. All he said is that, you know, he doesn't have the length and spread that we have, but he still has problems, so very interested on the feedback there as well. Thank you. Is there anything further for Lee regarding the report on freedom camping? Right, so the Lee, just a correction, sorry, in your report on the conclusion 4.2, hold a workshop with members in January 2026, otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for that question.
But that's okay, it's Christmas. Right, so can I have a mover and seconder, please, so we can resolve that the information paper report be received? Thank you, Councillor Martin, Councillor Grant, thank you very much, all in favour? Everybody? Oh, yes, okay, we have a ruling that we can't sit for more than 2 hours, we're now on 2.5. So we need a resolution to continue. We can carry on through till we get to the confidential section and have a 2-minute break there if you'd like.
Yes.
So the resolution is that we carry on, if everybody's happy with that, until we get to the confidential section and we've stop for 2 minutes then and then recommence with the meeting. Is everybody, and Ewan's dishing out with chocolates. Thank you very, very much, Ewan, for these. Greatly appreciated. So is everybody quite happy that we do that for timing? Yes, can I have a move and seconder, please, that we say thank you, Councillor Gillette, seconder, please, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Maitland. So that is what we'll do. Is that the okay. Proposed alcohol restriction bylaw 2026. Again, we have Mr. Webster here for the report, the bylaw. Thank you, Lee.
Again, through the chair. I'll take the report as read. So the purpose of the report is to propose a new alcohol restriction bylaw and subject to your approval today to probably consult on that and to ensure that we have the measures in place to prevent any potential issues that we may get from the inappropriate or excessive consumption of alcohol in public places at certain times. And so the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, along with the Local Government Act, quite a high threshold in relation to having a bylaw and what you can do to place those restrictions on people in public places. This bylaw is reflecting one that we've had previously, along with the locations and timings for those, which we would then, subject again to your approval today, we would start that consultation, and with it being anticipated that we would have a new bylaw in place by early March, so around the 5th of March, 2026.
Waiting for.
Take any questions.
Thank you, Lee. Questions for Lee, please? Councillor Walker. Oh, sorry.
The old bylaw, is there problems with it, or is there shortcomings, or?
So the only issue in relation to that, so with the statutory process, so once you've created the bylaw initially, you've got 5 years in which to review that bylaw. Right. If that bylaw is not reviewed within 5 years, you've got a further 2 years, after which, if it's not reviewed, so 7 years in total, the bylaw is revoked. So that's the current situation that we've got. And so in recognising that being revoked a few months ago, we are looking to put in a new proposed bylaw that reflects that and to reinstate that basically.
And legally, the public has to be consulted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if it's a formality, it's.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, I was just going to ask, since it's lapsed, what's the drama that's happened in the last 5 months? Has there been anything that triggers the need to change?
There hasn't been currently, in relation to that. The purpose of having the bylaw reinstated is to ensure that doesn't cause problems further down the line. So whilst initially there may be no additional incidents of alcohol fueled issues, shall we say, is that we don't want that to come back as to why the bylaw was originally implemented, basically. And so this bylaw is just to reflect that, to ensure that we've got those measures in place so that the police, should there be an issue, they can address the issue through the legislation, basically.
Just through the chair, can I just highlight the fact that what it did show to us, bringing that lapse to the forefront, was that the systems here, we needed was really a system of checking all of those bylaws that expired, just so where it's again. So just to give you folk a little more comfort that previously we weren't aware that there wasn't a system in place that tipped over that said you're now, 3 months out, 2 months out, 1 month out. And we need to have that in place so that we don't have the lapses occurring as if done without, and suddenly being aware that we've got nothing in place.
And if I can through the chair, just to follow on from what I was saying is that you'll probably see me quite a bit in the coming months. Basically, there are a number of different policies and bylaws that I'll be bringing to you. There'll be workshops that I'll be wanting to get direction from you as well to inform what we do moving forward to deliver on what we want to follow. So, yeah, you see me a reasonable amount of time.
It's all right, it makes things have been done. Councillor Maitland.
Thanks, through the chair. When I was reading that seems to be some situations here where everybody would be doing as to whether someone is sort of causing trouble, that wouldn't be possible. But also in saying that, everything that this bylaw covers also be covered by the drunk and disorderly law. So do we really like this? We don't have this in Ross or Ask or whatever. It's a sort of a certain level of sort of community, sort of in Hokitika that requires a law like this, or.
If I may, in response to that, the legislation provides for the police are very good at drug police response. And so, first and foremost, having conversations. The bylaw through the legislation also enables that infringements can be issued. So that's $250 basically as a lower level offending. But not from you. That's not necessarily through other policing matters that they can address from an infringement point of view, whereby they may have to take more punitive actions, basically, from that perspective. In relation to the other areas of our district that it's not necessarily covering, at this stage in time, there is no need for that versus what we've seen in Hokitika over previous years, and it's just a re-establishing in that. And again, when I went back to sort of say, well, it's quite a high threshold. Unless there's evidence to support the need for that, we don't want to have a bylaw put in place to restrict it because it is a restriction on people's rights and civil liberties. Yeah.
Councillor Martin. If this needed amendment done, that I'm reading here that wild food is mentioned, that and it's going to continue to be for the future. If it didn't, for example, what's the process for amending, or would the need for the bylaw not exist anymore?
Essentially, for that, and that would be a conversation for yourselves. You can, once you have a bylaw in place, it's about 5 years like we were initially talking about, you can amend a bylaw at any point in time. It's the process that we just go through in relation to that. If we're making bylaws less restrictive, there's usually less issues in relation to that. If we're putting a bylaw in place, that challenges or concerns from the community can often come out.
All right, all those questions? The lead on that. We've got worry, we're bereft of that we've got to, yeah.
Well, we've got other mechanisms.
Yes, we've got other mechanisms in place. So again, it's good that we're having a try off anyway.
Sorry,
Councillor Trevor.
Through the chair, just on the map, map B, got a line that goes around the race towards the new residential development outside the lift van area where the current seem to be able to effectively drink on Park Street up until you got to, sorry, wouldn't be able to, until you got to the race course. So it's worth straightening up that line to encompass the residential part half of the race course, but probably straighten that up at Town Bells. Do you understand?
Yeah.
We fixed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we won't put this through. We'll give you a
Right, yeah.
Anything further? Councillor?
I was just reading back on the paper. Seems like we're waiting on integrated public consultation while we have the workshop and public consultation.
Yeah, well, in relation to this bylaw is we're looking to go to public consultation immediately. The workshop will cover a number of other topics in relation to the previous report, which is the freedom camping, and there'll be other matters that we have the conversation about.
Thank you for that. Do you do that?
Yeah, let's come.
Yeah, piece of chocolate. Yeah, have a piece of chocolate. Thank you. That's all.
So this is policy, this for what? I mean, we didn't have, yeah, just trying to understand the need for this. Other than take away Wild Foods Weekend, still have a need.
Yes, in short. And so there is a restriction in relation to alcohol consumption from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. perspective. And so that's really establishing that the removal of the bylaw potentially and looking ahead over a period of time may lead to more public disorder from what has been experienced in previous years, which was the reason for the bylaw in the first place, basically. And so if you decide that you don't want a bylaw, that's absolutely fine. And then we would not proceed in relation to that. From the history of why the bylaw was initially implemented, is that has been revoked currently. So I'm suggesting that we reapply through the public consultation to have that in place, so that we don't get those issues resurfacing. Okay.
If there's no further questions, for me, we've received, please resolve that the report be received. And the council approves the proposed alcohol restriction bylaw 2026 for public consultation. Are the reasons received, please? Councillor Martin, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gilliard, thank you very much. Yes, come on, peeps. All in favour? All in favour? Gary, thank you. Thanks, Lee, very much.
If I can, just for one moment, there was a question earlier from Councillor Mackenzie just with regards to the District Licensing Committee. So just a point of clarity for that. So that is a committee of council through the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act. It is a committee that is independent of council. And so whilst you would appoint those members, we will be in January starting expressions of interest through that process. And then when we have those expressions of interest, there will be a report that will come to yourselves to look at who you want to appoint on that committee. So just a point of clarity.
Just responding to Lee. I've had some feedback that it's incredibly difficult to get a liquor license here.
Yeah, absolutely.
The RSA.
I agree.
So is that purely because of the external nature, and are they just buttoning down, or are they following up the bylaw? Or?
I will be honest, that is news to me, because this is national legislation under the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act. We don't have a local alcohol policy that is more restrictive than what the national legislation says. So what I'd be keen to understand where that's coming from, so we can have a conversation about this.
Thank you. Because I do know too that sometimes it's the rules that they've got to comply with that make it difficult. I know it's not what it used to be.
It can be,
even temporary.
yeah, it can come back, feedback through the legal authorities, like the police, or objections through other members of the community, so it's not necessarily.
Yeah, but the RSA, full of the pensioners, getting out, throwing their zipper frames at people and things like that. It just seems bizarre that it took them a year to get a liquor license.
Let me look into that.
So we can. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lee, very much for that. Really appreciate it. Right, to keep things moving along, you will have my report from 28th of November through to today. Well, actually tomorrow, because I think I've got Friday's work on there. Yeah, so that's just me reporting in on what I've covered in the past less than a month, 3 weeks. busy time of the year. It's actually not much more busy than it is normally. And the Future Friends work is down there too, because I am starting to pull that all together now that I've received the Regional Council's management strategy, looking at that and the other data from the external providers regarding Lake Pratt and Touchy River. So what I'd like to do in the new year is bring that to the council so you actually have a better understanding of what that Future Friends project is. And we have the lead on that, but I'll bring that to council as a full report so you can actually understand that sort of depth of work involved and what the intended outcome is, because it is kind of under urgency as far as French Joseph goes, because at the moment there've been a long time without any serious flooding down there, and you can sort of hangs on a bit of a thread as to when that next extreme flood will be and what carnage it will create. Plus with one of our wastewater ponds to manage the water as well, future sites, so that's part of it as well. Yeah, so that's my my report. I just need that to be received. If anybody would like to just. You councillor, is that questions or is that receiving?
Receiving.
Councillor Walker, Councillor Maitland, thank you for that. That's that signed off.
I said, oh, so that's kind of luck, and then I did it over.
Yeah, there's more. That's just relax. Yeah, it's not much different to normal. It's not just.
Did we get that out to the public last month?
I have the media. Oh, well, yes, it did. I didn't see it, but it did.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And just on that too, is that because the media release that's going out from this council meeting also has the rural connectivity advocacy delivery delivers results on Hannah's Clearing and Bald Hill. As I received 2 letters, and I think I've got this at the top of that report, 2 letters from Minister Goldsmith yesterday advising 5G mobile tower in Hannah's Clearing, which is absolutely fantastic news, and I'm very pleased with that result. And then they sprung another one on me on Bald Hill, which is where Knights Point is. It's actually inland there, so it serves quite a broad spectrum, but it gives us a bit of surety there too. And I didn't know that was on the radar, but very, very pleased about that. So some more good results, especially for South Western with that. And I know University of Hannah's Clearing are absolutely thrilled. So thank you, Minister. So next on the agenda is administrative resolutions. First off, we have, and this is to confirm council confirming its seal being affixed to the following documents. First one is Bethan Nickens, Noise Control Officer, statutory delegations and enforcement to act in the West District as an officer pursuant to section 174 of the Local Government Act 2002. An officer of the Western District Council bylaws and an enforcement officer pursuant to section 38 of the Resource Management Act 1991 and arranged pursuant to section 8 of the Impounding Act 1955. Authority to exercise all the functions and powers of the enforcement officer under sections 327, 328, which relate to excessive noise of Resource Management Act 1991. The second one is Quinton J, Building Control Officer, statutory delegations and enforcement to act in the Western District as an officer pursuant to section 174 of the Local Government Act 2002 and an authorised officer pursuant to section 222 of the Building Act 2004 and an enforcement officer pursuant to section 371B, the Building Act 2004, and an officer under the Western District Council bylaws and an enforcement officer pursuant to section 38 of the Resource Management Act 1991. So council can confirm its seal being affixed to those documents. And this is just a sign-off procedure. I know. Just confirm. So is everybody happy that we confirm that we endorse those appointments? Move for a second, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
To the chair, is the noise control officer a full-time job or is it?
I don't think it's a full-time job, no. No, it won't be too.
It's not full-time. No, I don't know exactly what you do.
It's contracted as well, so just move a second on. So can I just have a move for a second, please, that we can confirm the fixing of the seal to those appointments, councillor Maitland, councillor Burden, thank you very much, all in favour? Thank you. And next on the list is for us to resolve to go into the public excluded section of the meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? To enable that, councillor Gillette, councillor Maitland, thank you very much. So I declare that council move into the public excluded section at 3:52. But I would also like to thank the members of the public viewing the live stream and all those in attendance at the meeting today that have now left, but potentially are watching via Zoom now. Janella, do you want to hold fire?
No, I will go because it's really quite hard to hear you guys.